It's been a while since I've been able to come home early, so I thought I would make my granddaughter Eva's favorite beef stew today. As I walked, picturing Eva's delighted face, I arrived in front of my house. At that moment, a car turned a corner, so I stepped aside to avoid being in the way. The car slowly passed in front of me. In the driver's seat was my husband Mark, and in the passenger seat was Eva. As I watched the taillights disappear into the distance, I was seized by an overwhelming sense of unease. Eva, sitting in the passenger seat, had her head drooped and her lips tightly pressed together. Her expression was very similar to the one she has when she's been scolded. It was clear that they weren't going out to have fun. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday afternoon, I was at the dealership. "Thank you for waiting, Sarah." The inspection went smoothly, but the mechanic, Jackson, rubbed his hands together, clearly uncomfortable about what he was about to say. "Your husband has been using this car recently, right? I don't think I can say this here. Could you come with me to check something?" I followed Jackson to where the car was parked. Jackson opened a car and pulled out a plastic bag. "Actually, we found this on the floor during the inspection." I looked inside the bag and was shocked. It was the missing panties of Eva. The rolled-up panties were quite dirty. So that's what it was. "I don't need this car anymore. Get rid of this car." I left those words behind and returned home. My name is Sarah. I am sitting at the dinner table with my husband Mark, my daughter Isabella, and my granddaughter Eva. All of us eating together as a family. Eva, who just started 2nd grade, seems to be having fun every day in the new school term. She is talking enthusiastically about her day at school, her mouth full of food. And then my friend Sophia got scolded by the teacher. "Eva, swallow your food before you talk." "Okay." Eva obediently swallowed her food and immediately started talking again. Isabella smiled in exasperation but seemed to be enjoying Eva's stories. Eva is truly adorable. The term carefree child must have been made for her. And you know what, Grandma? The teacher was chasing a bunny and fell into a hole. Oh my, that must have been awful. I hope the teacher didn't get hurt. Nope, she seemed fine, but her face turned bright red. Isabella and I burst out laughing at Eva's story. I felt so happy to be spending such peaceful time with my family, but such moments never last long. Suddenly, Mark's loud voice echoed through the dining room. "Are you kidding me? Why aren't you attacking now? You coward! What have you even been doing until now?" Mark wasn't yelling at us, but at the television. A world judo match was on the screen. Mark had practiced judo in his student days and still enjoyed watching matches. But when he watches, he hurls insults without caring that Eva is right there. This time, he seemed furious over a mistake made by one of the athletes. He kept complaining, completely oblivious to us. "Come on, move forward already. Why aren't you moving? Are you an amateur? Worthless, they're all so damn soft." The racket was so loud that I started to get annoyed as well. Not with the athletes, but with Mark. Having to listen to such foul language was ruining what should have been a pleasant dinner. If he has so many complaints, why doesn't he coach the team himself or get in the ring? That's what I thought, but I was too scared to say anything, worried his anger might turn on me. Once, when I tried to lightly caution him, he didn't hit me but spat a string of insults before storming out of the house. Even after he returned, he stayed in a bad mood for days, refusing to talk to anyone. Remembering that, I decided it was easier to just let him be. Across the table, Isabella and Eva had stopped smiling and were quietly eating, their heads lowered. Looking closely, I could see Eva's fingers and lips trembling slightly. The atmosphere had soured, and we all quickly scattered from the dinner table. As I was washing the dishes in the kitchen, the door opened, and Isabella poked her head in. Her expression was tense, as if something was wrong. "Mom, can I talk to you for a minute?" "What is it? Did something happen?" "Yeah, I was just putting away the laundry, but one of Eva's panties is missing." "Mom, have you seen it?" I stopped washing the dishes and looked at Isabella. "Underwear." Maybe it fell when I was bringing in the laundry. Isabella crossed her arms and came closer, lowering her voice to a whisper. I thought so too, but I've looked everywhere, and I can't find it. I'm starting to think maybe someone stole it. Oh, don't be ridiculous. That couldn't be. It's probably just mixed up somewhere. I'll help you look again. As we were talking, Eva peeked through the crack in the door this time. Oh, Eva, have you already finished brushing your teeth? Yay, I'm all done. Eva, didn't you lose a pair of panties? When Isabella asked. Eva turned her face away. I don't know. You don't know, really. Just as Isabella was about to press her further, we heard yelling from the living room. That's not what you do there. You're terrible. Just quit already. What kind of training results in such an embarrassing match? Here we go again. I sighed, hoping the match would end soon. Isabella sighed too. In that moment, Eva seemed to have slipped back to her room. She was no longer by the door. Hey, Mom, can't we do something about him? If we could, I wouldn't be struggling. You should just go to bed now. I'll head to bed after I clean up. You're right. Well, I'm heading up first then. The next day, I was standing by the front door to see Isabel off to work. It was just past 6:30 a.m. I'm heading out. Please take care of Eva. Isabella, dressed smartly in her suit, spoke to me politely. It was a daily routine. She'd always had a strong sense of responsibility, and it seemed to bother her that she had to rely on me to help take care of her child. But for me, Eva is my beloved granddaughter, so I've never felt the need for such formalities. Don't worry, Eva will be at school while I'm at my part-time job anyway. Right now, it's a busy season for me, so I'll be working late, but Mark will be around, so everything should be fine. Thanks, Isabella replied while checking her bag to make sure she hadn't forgotten anything. Just then, Eva appeared, all ready for school. Oh, Eva, you're already ready. Good girl. Eva beamed with pride. Isabella bent down to meet Eva at eye level. Eva, make sure to listen to Grandma and be good. Okay, Mom's off to work now, she said. Okay, I got it. All right, I'm heading out. With that, Isabella dashed out of the house. She's really become a responsible adult. Hard to believe she used to be so weak and sickly. When she moved back in after divorcing her cheating husband, I wondered how things would turn out, but she seems to have found stability. As I was getting ready to leave for my part-time job, the clock had just passed 7 o'clock. As I was about to see Eve off to school, I felt something different about her. It took me a moment to realize what it was. Eva, where's your hairpin? You know, the one you really liked. At my comment, Eva seemed flustered. Well, if I wear it, the teacher will get mad, so I didn't wear it. Really? That's strange. I don't remember seeing any notice about that. Just then, Mark came downstairs. The moment Eva saw him, she was visibly startled. Then she quickly said, I'm leaving now. See you later, and dashed out of the house. Is Eva hiding something from us? And she seemed scared of Mark, too. For Eva's sake, I thought I should find the right time to talk to Mark about it. Mark was sitting on the sofa, still in his pajamas, watching TV. Since he retired and started working as a part-time employee, he's been having more days off than before. Hey, my work schedule is going to get busier soon. So can you make sure to look after Eva when she gets home? I got it. Don't worry. Oh, and by the way, the car's going in for maintenance soon, so there'll be days you won't be able to use it. With that, I finished getting ready for work and left the house just before noon. My workplace is at a restaurant not too far from home. Usually, it's not that busy, but during this peak season, it's bustling. I'm still worried about Eva, but I decided to shift my focus and walked to work. The restaurant was indeed packed with reservations that day, and we were extremely busy. I was taking orders and handling complaints non-stop, barely getting any break time. By the time I left work, it was already past 9 o'clock. Isabella probably had not returned home yet either. She's working hard to earn money for Eva's future, with permission from her company. She's even doing a part-time job after hours. I just hope she doesn't overdo it and collapse. Thinking about this, I made my way home. As I turned the corner and could finally see the house, I stopped in my tracks, feeling a sense of unease. There wasn't a single light on in the house, and Mark's car was gone too. Mark must have taken Eva somewhere. Maybe they went to the nearby shopping mall. But is it really okay for them to be out this late? I just hope they haven't run into any trouble. Feeling anxious, I opened the fridge, pulled out the leftovers from last night's dinner, and heated them in the microwave. I also chopped up some cabbage as a side dish. Just then, Mark and Eva returned home. "Welcome back. Where did you go?" But neither of them responded to my question. "Do you want to take a shower first or have dinner?" I asked, and Mark simply said, "Dinner." Eva didn't say a word, keeping her head down, without a hint of a smile on her face. Something was off with Eva. Was she holding back her fear of Mark, trying to endure being with him? "Eva, how about you take a shower?" I decided not to press the issue, and gently took Eva's hand. However, she quickly pulled her hand away and said, "It's okay. I can do it by myself," before rushing to the bathroom. Something definitely happened between her and Mark. Watching her small figure disappear, I felt tears well up in my eyes. As soon as Mark finished eating, Eva came out of the shower, and Mark took his turn. I silently watched Eva as she ate her meal, but she didn't talk about school with the usual excitement. She looked utterly exhausted. "Eva, where did you and Grandpa go?" I asked her, but she only said one word, "Secret," and didn't say anything more. After finishing her meal, she quickly went to her room, worried about both of them. I finished my own dinner. A few days later, my busy work schedule finally came to an end. Since I'd be getting home early for the first time in a while, I thought, why not make Eva's favorite beef stew today? Imagining Eva's delighted face, I walked home. Just as I reached the front of the house, a car turned a corner, so I moved to the side of the road to avoid blocking it. The car slowly passed right in front of me. "Wait, is Mark going somewhere?" Mark was in the driver's seat, and Eva was in the passenger seat. Neither of them seemed to notice me as they drove off. Watching the taillights fade away, a sense of dread washed over me. Eva, sitting in the passenger seat, looked weak, her head hanging down, her lips tightly pressed together. That expression resembled the one she wears when she's being scolded. There was no way they were just going out to have fun. But with no way to follow them, I returned home. On the living room table, there was a note in Mark's handwriting. "Taking Eve out. We'll be late. Don't worry." But how could I not worry after seeing them like that? Trying to shake off my unease, I started making the beef stew. Time seemed to move painfully slow. 1 hour, 2 hours passed, and they still had not come back. I didn't take a shower or turn on the TV, just sat there waiting for them to return. Then, just after 9 o'clock, the front door opened. "We're home. Dad's out." "Where's Eva?" Without saying a word, I showed Isabella the note Mark had left. When she read it, she furrowed her brows. "It's strange, isn't it, taking her out this late?" "I think so too. I have a lot to talk about, but first, go get changed. You must be tired." After Isabella changed, I told her that this wasn't the first time Mark had taken Eva out late at night. Isabella had already suspected something was off with Eva. However, time passed without us reaching any clear conclusions. It was much later when the two of them finally returned home. Isabella and I asked them many questions, but their responses were vague, as if they were trying to evade the truth. Just like before, they ate their dinner silently, showered, and went straight to bed. Something was definitely wrong. They were hiding something. But how could we get them to open up? 2 weeks passed without any resolution, until one Saturday afternoon, I found myself at the car dealership. I had brought the car in for a checkup that morning. Mark is the one who usually drives, but the car is under my name, so I'm the one who handles maintenance and inspections. I know Jackson, the mechanic, and we're on friendly terms, often exchanging small talk. A few years ago, Mark had an accident, and we both came to the dealership together. Jackson knows that Mark is the one who mainly uses the car. While waiting in the lounge, I could see my car parked outside through the glass. Next to it, a young mechanic in his 20s and an older mechanic, likely the supervisor, were having a serious conversation. Jackson soon approached me. "Sarah, thanks for waiting. The checkup is done," but he rubbed his hands together nervously, as if finding it difficult to say something. I started to feel uneasy. "What is it? Is there a problem?" "Well, your husband's been using the car recently, right? I'd rather not discuss this here. Could you come with me to take a look?" "All right." I followed Jackson to where the car was parked. When he opened a car door, he pulled out a plastic bag. When we inspected the interior of the car, we found this on the floor. "I'm really sorry to bring this up, but I think you need to see it." When I looked at the contents of the bag, I was shocked. It was Eva's missing underwear. It had been crumpled and was quite dirty, and inside the bag, there was also the hairpin that Eva had liked so much. It was twisted beyond recognition, with what looked like faint blood stains clinging to it. I stared at the two items in disbelief. I couldn't say a word. I was just overwhelmed by shock. But at that moment, I knew for certain Mark had done something terrible to Eva. Since I wasn't saying anything, Jackson seemed to grow worried and leaned in to check on me. Are you all right? If you need, I can contact the police for you." Hearing that, I snapped out of my shock. "Oh, no, I'm sorry. Actually, these are my granddaughters. She must have been embarrassed about having an accident and tried to hide it." "Oh, I see. My apologies for assuming. I thought maybe something serious had happened. But if that's the case, then it makes sense." "I thought maybe something serious had happened. But if that's the case, then it makes sense." He seemed to have been concerned in his own way. "I'm sorry for worrying you. By the way, is it possible to check where this car has been using the navigation system?" "Yes, of course. Modern cars keep a history of locations visited. Sometimes people even use it to catch cheating spouses. Would you like to take a look, please?" It didn't take long to retrieve the information. The car had been to 3 locations recently: Mark's workplace, a regular grocery store, and Mark's family home. Mark's family home is now vacant, and there shouldn't have been any reason to visit. So it was clear to me that Mark had taken Eva there. Certain of this, I told Jackson, "Please get rid of this car." I paid for the inspection and walked home. This car must be a source of trauma for Eva. As soon as I got home, I confronted Mark about what I had discovered at the dealership. "I found this in the car." "What were you doing with Eva?" "Nothing. She probably hid her underwear because she was embarrassed about dirtying them." "If that's the case, why did you go to your family's home?" "The location was in the navigation system history. You had no reason to go there." "I had reasons. I needed to pull some weeds and clean up. Eva wanted to help, so I took her along." Mark was lying on the couch, yawning as he answered my questions. "You were out until so late. Eva is still just a little girl. You're getting on my nerves. What's your problem?" Mark sat up and grabbed me by the collar. "You told me to take care of her, and that's what I did. So why the hell are you blaming me?" "Don't push your luck." I was terrified, certain he was going to hit me. Instinctively, I closed my eyes. But as furious as he was, Mark didn't resort to violence. Instead, he shoved me against the wall and laughed before lying back down on the couch. I was so scared that I couldn't say another word. "We're done talking? You're getting on my nerves, so get lost. If you push me any further, I don't know what I might do." In the end, I couldn't get any answers out of Mark and had to retreat. Frustrated, I cried alone in the bedroom. But it was clear that I couldn't physically stand up to Mark. He could easily crush me if he wanted to. Still, I couldn't just leave things as they were. As I buried my face into the bed, I began to plan what to do next. That night, after Mark had gone to sleep, I spoke with Isabella about what had happened earlier that day. As soon as she heard it, Isabella's face turned red with anger. "No matter what, I can't forgive Dad. And to treat you that way, Mom, is just awful." She clenched her fist as she spoke. I've been thinking. I want you to take the day off work this Monday. I'll take off too, and we'll have Eva stay home from school. I don't mind doing that, but what are you planning? Mark will be at work that day, so I think we should talk to Eva and find out what's really going on. Isabella crossed her arms and spent some time thinking. I didn't rush her, patiently waiting for her to gather her thoughts. I get what you're saying, Mom, but I'm worried about Eva. She's hurting, I can feel it, I know that, but getting anything out of Mark is impossible, and we don't have any concrete proof. Our only option is to hear it from Eva. Then Monday came. Eva seemed happy to be staying home from school, smiling brightly. That's when Isabella and I decided to ask her the truth. Hey, Eva, where did Grandpa take you? It's a secret. Eva, please, just tell us honestly. We're here to protect you. At Isabella's pleading words, Eva's smile faded. She puffed her cheeks and kept watching TV. Eva, please. Isabella gently hugged her from behind and whispered into her ear. That's when Eva's face twisted and tears began to pour from her eyes. I hate Grandpa. I hate him so much. She clung to Isabella's arms and burst into tears. I gently rubbed her back to comfort her. I'm so sorry we didn't realize sooner. You've been through so much pain, but it's okay now. You're safe. Eva cried for a while, but once she calmed down, she sniffled and began to tell us everything. Grandpa said he was going to teach me some lessons all of a sudden. When I said no, he hit me. What kind of lessons? He called it judo. Even though I told him it hurt, he wouldn't stop. He even broke my hairpin. But I didn't want to get scolded, so I hid it. And I'm sorry about my underwear. I'm in 2nd grade, but I had an accident. Grandpa. Even recalling it was terrifying for her. Eva's body was trembling. That was enough. How could anyone do something so horrible to such a sweet child? I bit my lip hard, trying to contain my rage. Eva, thank you for telling us. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. How about you rest in your room for a bit? Isabella took Eva to her room. Unforgivable. I had made up my mind to protect Eva. When Isabella came back to the living room, I'm going to call Mark, I simply said. Isabella immediately understood what I was planning. She nodded without saying a word. What's going on? Did something happen? My lunch break's almost over. I'm starving, so make it quick. I put the phone on speaker mode. I heard everything from Eva. You've been giving her judo lessons, haven't you? Yay, I have. I've been teaching her judo. His tone was as if he was doing something completely ordinary. You knew Eva didn't want to do it, didn't you? Her body is covered in bruises. Shut up. It's your fault. You gave birth to her with such a weak body, so I had no choice but to teach her judo. I felt my body heat up in anger at Mark's words. Don't just do whatever you want. She's still at an age where she listens to everything adults say. Adults need to be more considerate. That's exactly why. You're an idiot. Listen, the earlier a kid starts sports, the better. Honestly, Eva's age is already late. So don't interfere. You're an idiot. Listen, the earlier a kid starts sports, the better. Honestly, Eva's age is already late. So don't interfere. Why do something she hates? No one asked you to. As Isabella and I fought back, Mark grew increasingly irritated, and his tone became rough. I had a dream of becoming an Olympic athlete. You know, that didn't happen. But now it's different. I can make Eva an Olympian. That didn't happen. But now it's different. I can make Eva an Olympian. That's just your ego. Don't drag Eva into your dream. Shut up. You'd be proud too if someone from your family became an Olympian. You could brag to your friends. Plus, with the money she'd make, we could live comfortably. It's not a bad deal, is it? Mark was determined to make Eva a judo Olympian. But it wasn't for Eva's sake, it was for his own. He was lashing out at his granddaughter because of the frustration and bitterness from his past failure. How pathetic. I was no longer angry. I was just tired of it all. There's no point in talking any further. What did you say? Listen, Mark. There's no one who can fulfill your broken dreams for you. Even if Eva were to go to the Olympics, it wouldn't make you great. What are you trying to say? The only thing we can do now is to watch over her as she grows. You know that, don't you? So just give up. Your dream is over. You've got to be kidding me. I. Mark couldn't continue his words. All I could hear was a faint sound of him grinding his teeth. Stop trying to teach Eva judo. If you want to practice so badly, go learn it yourself. With that, I hung up the phone. There was nothing more I wanted to say to Mark. When I looked over at Isabella, I saw that she was silently crying. Isabella, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Then, Isabella and I started packing our things from the room. We were leaving this house. We had been together for a long time, but I could never forgive him for hurting Eva. From the moment Eva first told me, I had already decided to divorce him. Eva agreed quickly and was packing her school things. After we finished packing, I called a taxi and decided to go to the nearest hotel for the time being. On the table, I left a note saying, "We're leaving. I'll send the divorce papers later." A few months later, on a weekend, we were sitting around the dining table in our apartment. On the plate in front of Eva was her favorite beef stew. She was happily talking about her friends and the fun she had earlier in the day. And guess what? Sophia stepped in dog poop. "Hey, don't talk about that while we're eating," Isabella said, but she was laughing as she scolded her. Watching the two of them, I felt a sense of peace and happiness. Right after we left the house, Isabella explained the situation to her boss. Her boss kindly suggested that we move into a company apartment. Also, my divorce from Mark was finalized quickly. In fact, a neighbor living near Mark's family had witnessed his interactions with Eva. It turned out that what he called training was far from it. The neighbor had filmed the incident as evidence and reported it to the police. That undeniable proof led not only to our divorce, but also to Mark having to pay a large sum in compensation through the divorce settlement. Perhaps Mark realized his mistakes, as he didn't put up much resistance. We arranged for the car to be sold back to the dealer, and it was picked up soon after. "Grandma, listen to me." Sorry. What is it?" I smiled and listened to Eva's stories with joy. I was so glad to see her looking so happy and healthy again. Eva had been emotionally scarred by Mark's actions. Isabella quit her part-time job to spend more time with Eva. I also did everything I could to help heal Eva's heart. Thanks to that, she gradually regained her smile. The emotional scars probably won't fade easily, but Isabella and I are committed to being by her side, always. And you know what? I'm going out again tomorrow, so I'll have lots more stories to tell. All right, I'm looking forward to it. Be careful and have fun, okay?
Making terrible food when the family's all gathered? Come on! After just one bite of the meal, Osborne flipped his plate and the food onto the table, filling the room with his angry shout. All the relatives gathered looked shocked, staring in Osborne's direction. None of them had ever seen someone throw food on the floor like that. They must all be feeling the same way. "Hey, what are you doing? It's your fault for making such awful food. Calling yourself a housewife and then making this kind of slop when it matters. Who could eat this?" Osborne snickered through his nose. I looked at him with pity. "I didn't make it, though." "What?" Osborne froze, making a foolish sound. Now's my chance, the perfect opportunity. The chance for me, who's been oppressed till now, to fight back. I took a deep breath and calmed myself. My name is Shelley, 32 years old. I used to work for a condominium management company until I got married a year ago and resigned to become a housewife. I would have continued working if not for my husband Osborne's strong insistence that he wanted his wife to be a housewife. I listened to Osborne's request and left my job. Truth be told, I would have liked to work a bit longer, but considering Osborne's income, I figured we could live comfortably without me needing to work. Osborne works for a major consulting firm. We met through work originally, and as we saw each other more because of our shared responsibilities, we became a couple and eventually got married. Osborne had been hopping from one consulting firm to another right after graduating from college, so he was skilled and had a way with words. During our work together, I was impressed by his professionalism and made the first move. I never thought a man like him would be interested in someone as average as me in both looks and abilities, but to my surprise, he reciprocated my feelings. I was so happy that I couldn't stop bragging to my friends about our relationship. My friends seemed fed up, but I was convinced that this was the peak of my happiness. When we decided to get married after a little over a year of dating, I was completely over the moon, unaware of the troubles that lay ahead. You know, I'm busy with work on weekdays, so I'll only be home on weekends. Please keep that in mind. The night we filed our marriage registration at the city office, Osborne casually mentioned it while watching TV in the living room. I was taken aback by his words, thinking we were about to start a happy married life. What? What do you mean? I mean, I'll only be coming home on weekends. Keeps the romance alive, don't you think? Well, yeah, but... What? You got a problem with that? No, not at all. Honestly, I was taken aback by his sudden announcement. A weekend marriage, isn't that unusual? It's strange to decide such an important thing all by oneself. If he really wanted a weekend marriage, he should have mentioned it before we got married. Why declare it suddenly on the day we register our marriage? Sure, seeing each other less might keep the excitement alive. But isn't it natural to want to be with the one you love all the time? I was more downhearted than I expected, having my expectations for our newlywed life dashed like that. Whether Osborne felt sorry for me or was trying to cheer me up, I couldn't tell, but he was unusually kind to me that day. That night, we consummated our marriage for the first time, temporarily pushing the thought of a weekend marriage out of my mind. Maybe it was a win for Osborne's strategy. Looking back, Osborne's declaration was just the beginning. Little did I know, I was about to face much bigger challenges than a mere weekend marriage. 2 months into our marriage, Osborne only came home on weekends, as he had declared. As a housewife, I wanted to cook dinner for my husband who'd come home tired every day, but my enthusiasm quickly waned. Sometimes when he came home on the weekends, he'd eat out instead. So, Osborne hardly ever ate what I cooked. I had been hinting for a while. Can't we stop this weekend marriage thing? Huh? You're just a housewife. Are you really going against what I say? But Osborne would override my opinion as if he were the most important person in the house. Sure, I'm a housewife, but that's because Osborne wanted it that way. I realized that Osborne had me quit my job so he could have his way at home, making me economically dependent on him and unable to go against his commands. That must have been Osborne's goal all along. Lying in bed at night, frustration overflowed. How did things end up like this? All I wanted was a happy marriage. But it's too late for regrets now. All I can do is wait patiently for Osborne to change his mind. I felt like I was thrown into a tunnel without an exit, filled with anxiety. When our marriage hit the 3-month mark, Osborne started coming home only occasionally, even on weekends. This wasn't what we agreed upon. With us barely seeing each other, what's the point of being married? Can we talk about our life together again? I gathered my courage to ask him again on a Friday night. Osborne reeked of alcohol, as if he'd been out drinking after work. At the same time, I detected a sweet fragrance, like that of Venus. It struck me. No, it couldn't be. I've told you over and over. I'm not changing my stance now. Even drunk, Osborne was as adamant as ever in his position. But this isn't what we promised initially. You said we'd spend weekends together. And now? You're not even home on weekends. I never agreed to this. Osborne's face turned red with anger when I said this. I realized I had made him upset. How many times do I have to say it? I won't budge. Why do you always have to complain? Maybe it's time you understood your place. Osborne's attitude, so different from before we were married, not valuing me at all, made me go from angry to just sad. Why did Osborne even marry me? Unable to bear it, I quickly retreated to my room. When I heard Osborne getting into the bath, I crept out of my room and sneaked into his. I didn't want to do this, but I couldn't stand being at a disadvantage anymore. I frantically searched his room for any evidence. Months went by, and our situation remained almost like a separation. I stopped saying anything to Osborne, who hardly ever came home. Something else was on my mind now, so I decided to live quietly for the time being. Then, one day, I received a call on my mobile phone. The caller was mother-in-law, Marjorie. I haven't seen Marjorie since we met for marriage introductions. I picked up the phone, wondering what she wanted. Hello? Shelley, it's me. Marjorie, hi. What's up? It sounded like Marjorie was in a supermarket, with the bustling noise coming through the phone. New Year's is coming up. You'll be coming to our place, right? All the relatives will be gathering, and we'd love for you to join us. Oh, you're talking about New Year's? Yes, I'd love to come. More importantly, Marjorie. I wondered if Marjorie knew something about Osborne and decided to probe. Have you spoken to Osborne recently? Osborne? Oh yes, we've talked several times. I've been reaching out because I'm concerned about him now that he's finally married. He says his married life is going well. What? I was puzzled by Marjorie's statement. Married life is going well? Was that something Osborne told Marjorie? How could our weekend marriage be considered going well? Then it hit me. Osborne must be deliberately lying to Marjorie, making it seem like our marriage is all smooth sailing. Marjorie, being the caring yet overprotective type, adored her son. I could tell from our first meeting and the way she talked about him. No offense, but I think everything Osborne has told you might be a lie. To be honest. I explained to Marjorie that Osborne had declared from the beginning of our marriage that he would only come home on weekends, and recently, even those days have become less frequent. What are you talking about, Shelley? Osborne would never do such a thing. How dare you try to deceive me with lies? Who do you think you are? Marjorie was furious, raising her voice over the phone. I sighed, thinking, as expected. She only believes Osborne's words. She wouldn't doubt that Osborne could be lying. If anyone speaks ill of Osborne, even if it's his wife, she'd go all out against them. That's her way. I'm not lying. If you're concerned, I can record what goes on in the house for a month and show you. Frustrated at being made out to be the villain despite suffering because of Osborne, I snapped back at Marjorie with my suggestion, but she utterly dismissed it. There's no need for such an embarrassing act. You're the worst kind of daughter-in-law. And with that, she hung up the phone. I had a feeling it might come to this. My father-in-law is a man of few words, so I can't tell what he thinks of me, but Marjorie probably just sees me as a convenient wife for Osborne. Knowing this made me feel weary of continuing this charade of a marriage with Osborne. I decided it was time to put into action a plan I had been considering for a while. The day arrived when Osborne's family was gathering at their home for the new year. Unsure of what would happen, I was determined to do whatever I could. I was quietly fired up inside. As the new year dawned, I went with Osborne to his parents' house as planned. Before leaving, I made a crucial call to someone. Man, going to the family home is such a drag. Osborne got ready and left the house reluctantly. Upon arriving at his parents' house, we were greeted by Osborne's parents, aunts, uncles, and cousins. A woman, who seemed to be a housekeeper, was preparing food in the kitchen. She wore glasses and a mask, and understandably, she didn't join our conversations, focusing on her work instead. With so many people around, it was hard to keep track of everyone. Oh, Shelley, welcome. Marjorie, still probably distrusting me after our phone call, greeted me without a hint of warmth in her eyes, despite her welcoming words. Forcing a smile, I lifted my stiff cheeks. Happy New Year! And managed to put on a smile. After that, Marjorie and I barely spoke as the meal preparations went on. I helped in the kitchen as well. My father-in-law remained his usual silent self, sitting on the sofa and reading the newspaper. Once the meal was ready and I had finished serving, everyone began to eat. I noticed Osborne picking up a dish of stew. And just as I was about to reach for some rice, feeling hungry, he exclaimed, "Making terrible food when the family's all gathered? Come on!" The sound of porcelain hitting the floor made everyone's shoulders jerk. Osborne, having flipped his plate and the meal onto the table after just one bite, filled the room with his angry voice. All the gathered relatives looked at him in shock, never having seen someone throw food on the floor like this before. They must all be feeling the same way. "Hey, what are you doing? It's your fault for making such awful food. Calling yourself a housewife and then making this kind of slop when it matters. Who could eat this?" Osborne snorted through his nose. I looked at him with pity. "I didn't make it, though." "What?" Osborne froze, making a foolish sound. "Now's my chance. This is the perfect opportunity. The chance for me, who's been oppressed till now, to fight back." I took a deep breath and calmed myself. "What are you talking about? You were in the kitchen preparing the meal just now." Osborne looked at me, confused, and snorted through his nose. "True, I was in the kitchen. But the housekeeper was there too, right? I was just setting the table. The housekeeper made the meal. Right?" I directed my gaze towards the housekeeper, who was supposed to be resting in the back room. Seeing the housekeeper, who had unexpectedly appeared, all the relatives were taken aback. "Yes, that's correct. See? And just so you know, I invited the housekeeper. Let me introduce her. This is my mom." The housekeeper, no, mom, took off her glasses and mask. Osborne and his parents were shocked to see her face. They obviously knew Mom and were surprised to see her here. Weren't you the housekeeper Osborne hired?" "No. Like I'd arranged that." It seemed Marjorie had assumed Osborne had hired the housekeeper, and now she was trembling. "Hey, Osborne, you know what my mom does for a living, right? She works at a traditional Japanese restaurant and makes delicious meals every day. But today, she made the dishes lighter for the family." "Why did you think I made the meal?" "Because you were in the kitchen until just now." Osborne raised his voice in frustration in response to my question. Indeed, from an objective standpoint, it might have seemed natural for him to assume that I, having been in the kitchen, had cooked the meal with my mom. However, what Osborne, who hardly ever ate my cooking, didn't realize was that my cooking style is quite different. Unlike the meal my mom prepared today, which was light in flavor, my dishes tend to be richer and more robust. I prefer my food with plenty of soy sauce and mirin, making it quite flavorful. "That's true. But the main reason is that you've hardly ever eaten my cooking." "Huh? What do you mean?" Everyone except Osborne, confused by the situation, widened their eyes. Osborne's face turned pale, and he froze on the spot. I decided to confront him and lay bare all his dishonesty right then and there. "On the day we registered our marriage, Osborne declared to me that he would only come home on weekends and spend the weekdays away. It was a so-called weekend marriage. He never mentioned such a thing before we got married. I was shocked. I couldn't agree to it, but whenever I tried to object or discuss it, he would just insist that as a housewife, I had no right to oppose him, and he never listened to my opinions." The relatives were visibly shocked as the truth about our marriage came to light, Marjorie, in particular. "That can't be true. Are you still saying that? Osborne has always told me that he and you are living happily together. Don't say such embarrassing things in front of the relatives." Watching Marjorie staunchly defend her son, taking his side to the point of making fierce accusations, I sighed. It was almost time. Time to reveal that secret. Just as I was bracing myself, clenching my fists, a voice came from the entrance. "Osborne? Are you here?" The voice of an unfamiliar woman caused all the relatives to startle. As one of the relatives exclaimed in confusion, the door swung open, and a young woman peeked in. Dressed in a short skirt, sporting bright red nails, and with glossy hair, she looked to be in her 20s. After scanning the room full of people, she widened her eyes in surprise. "Huh?" she uttered, sounding confused. "Osborne? What's going on here?" she called out to Osborne in a sweet voice, looking around bewildered. It was clear that everyone except me was struggling to grasp the situation. "Noreen, why are you here?" Osborne's expression, filled with surprise, only added to Noreen's confusion as she tilted her head, unable to understand the situation. "What do you mean, why? You're the one who called me here. You said you wanted to introduce me to your family because we're getting married." "What? When did I say that?" "You know, 2 weeks ago." When Noreen showed the message exchange on her phone, Osborne was taken aback. "I never sent this." "Then who did?" As they argued fiercely, I stepped forward to clarify. "Nice to meet you, I'm Osborne's wife. I'm the one who invited you here today." "Sorry, Osborne, but I sent the message without your knowledge." "What?" Both of them were dumbfounded, their mouths agape. Indeed, I had been plotting to get back at Osborne since the day Marjorie invited me over for New Year's. 2 weeks ago, while Osborne was taking a bath late at night, I snuck out of the bedroom and grabbed his phone. It was clear from their frequent exchanges that Noreen was his affair partner. So, I decided to lure her here today, pretending to be Osborne, to catch them in the act. The relatives began to murmur among themselves after hearing our exchange. And Osborne's parents' faces turned pale. I had my suspicions. Why would Osborne start a life where he only comes home on weekends right after we got married? A weekend marriage means we barely see each other. What's the point of being married if that's the case? If he really loved me, he wouldn't want such a life. That's because I'm busy with work. I've told you this many times. Even after all this, Osborne was still trying to resist. In disbelief, I sighed heavily in exasperation. Work? Yes, I believed that at first. But then I started smelling perfume on you when you came home at night. I couldn't believe it, so I hired a detective to investigate. What? An investigation? Osborne trembled all over. I pulled out a report from a private detective from my bag and thrust it at both Osborne and Noreen. I had suspected Osborne's infidelity and had hired a detective a while back. Evidence of his cheating was quickly found, allowing me to gather a substantial amount of proof. You started dating 5 years ago when Noreen was just 15. You picked her up in town and started a relationship. Of course, you couldn't marry a child like Noreen. Plus, she's working in the nightlife industry now. I doubt your parents would approve. But you felt pressure from your parents to marry soon. So, you settled for a safe choice like me to stop them from nagging, all the while continuing your relationship with Noreen, planning to divorce me under the guise of being busy with work, and then marry her. That's the gist of it. I pieced together the information I learned from the detective's report and the message exchanges between Osborne and Noreen, exposing their deceit. What are you saying? Osborne would never. Marjorie tried to defend Osborne, but faced with the irrefutable evidence, she could no longer argue and her shoulders slumped in defeat. Osborne and the woman, Noreen, were trembling as they looked at each other. Eventually, Osborne broke the silence with an accusation. This is low. Using tactics like this to disgrace us, it's filthy. At his words, I felt a surge of anger so intense it felt like my veins might burst, and I shouted back. Low? What are you talking about? The only low thing here is you, disappearing right after we got married. Approaching me while having someone else, using me, and then playing the victim? You were just waiting for me to get fed up and initiate a divorce, weren't you? Well, sorry to disappoint. We will get divorced, but you'll be paying me a fair settlement in court. And you too, Noreen. I glared at Osborne and Noreen with the most intimidating look I had ever mustered. Why me? I don't have any money. Please, forgive me. I was wrong. But please, not the settlement in court. Ignoring their pleas, I glared at them once more. Just get out of here, now. And yelled. At my scream, Osborne and Noreen finally scurried out of the house with yelps. I sincerely apologize for the disturbance, everyone. As I stepped back, sighs of relief were heard among the relatives. They were all dumbfounded by Osborne's actions, at a loss for words. Shelley. I don't know what to say. Marjorie, who had staunchly believed in Osborne and criticized me, now looked away awkwardly. I left the in-laws' house with my mom, who had pretended to be the housekeeper. I likely wouldn't return to this house again. My troubled marriage of 1 year to Osborne thus came to an end. A few days later, I had Osborne sign the divorce papers and filed them at the city hall. I was officially single again. Although now divorced, my marriage had been so brief and distant that it hardly felt different. Since Osborne and I had lived in a rented apartment, I effectively evicted him without further issues. Afterward, Osborne, lacking funds due to squandering money on his mistress, had to ask relatives for a loan to pay the settlement ordered in the divorce. Despite his supposed elite job, his financial woes were due to his lavish spending on his mistress. However, after the New Year's incident, no relative was willing to lend him money. He was forced to take out a bank loan. Noreen, too, took out a loan to pay her part of the settlement for the divorce court. With both of them now embroiled in the struggle to repay their loans, any plans for marriage had to be postponed. At least until they managed to clear their debts, as both sets of parents unanimously advised against marriage under such financial strain. The in-laws, likely fed up with being entangled in any more trouble, seemed to think it was only fair for them to experience the hardship of debt repayment. Let him struggle with paying his debts for all I care. Compared to the year of suffering I endured, earning money to repay his debts seemed easy, almost like it was someone else's problem. Meanwhile, I returned to my previous job at the condominium management company and am now enjoying my work. It's much better for my mental health than staying cooped up at home. If I ever consider marriage again, I've quietly vowed to myself that it will be with someone who is supportive of both partners working. It was during a family trip with my in-laws and brother-in-law's family. I was shocked when my 9th grader, Lola, confessed she was pregnant. Right after, I got a call from the hospital. Lola and my husband, Madison, had been rushed to the ER. I gasped at the police explanation. Please listen calmly. It was a murder-suicide. What? The blood drained from my body and I started shaking. My gentle Madison would never do such a thing. Seeing Madison and Lola unharmed only strengthened that belief. Later, my sister-in-law Eleanor and family arrived at the hospital. While my in-laws, Madison and Lola stepped out, Eleanor whispered to me, "That girl thinks she got pregnant just from getting cozy with her boyfriend. Stupid, right?" As I grew flustered, Rilla mocked me with a laugh. "We gave her a toy pregnancy test and she freaked out thinking it was real. Her pale, crying face was hilarious." Anger heated my body as they laughed. I won't forgive this. Rilla and Eleanor. I'll make you regret making me truly angry. I'm Aaliyah, a 48-year-old housewife. I've been married to my same-age husband, Madison, for 17 years. Madison and I have a daughter, Lola. She's an honest, kind girl we're proud of. We lived an ordinary life, the three of us laughing at TV variety shows or squealing with Lola over music idols. But one day, our average days came crashing down. Madison has an older brother, Garrett, who lives with my in-laws in the next town. Garrett and his wife have a daughter, Rilla, 2 years older than Lola. She's a cute girl who takes after her beautiful mother, Eleanor. But being spoiled by Garrett and Eleanor, she does whatever she wants. I'd rather not have Lola associate with her much. But they're cousins who attend the same elementary and middle school, so it can't be helped. We live in a rural area, so all the relatives gather at my in-laws during long holidays, summer break, and Christmas. My in-laws are good people who dote on Lola like Rilla and look forward to seeing her grow. But I couldn't stand Garrett and Eleanor from the start of my marriage. They're graduates of a nationally renowned university. Garrett, who works for a large corporation, constantly looks down on Madison for being dumb and poor since he works at a small company. Eleanor smugly blogs about her carefree housewife life and pities me for still working after marriage. That's one thing, but I can't forgive them for mocking Lola too. Poor thing, being born to impoverished parents. Too bad she wasn't born cuter. And every time we meet, Eleanor brags about Rilla's looks. Our girl is a beauty like her mom, she's a hit at kindergarten. A modeling agency scouted her. Well, I wouldn't send her to such a small place. In group photos, I feel bad for the other kids. They're all just foils for Rilla. Rilla, adored and spoiled by her parents, couldn't possibly grow up to be decent. Since she was little, she acted queenly with snide words and actions. For example, this one time. After giving birth to Lola and my maternity leave, I returned to work full-time. On weekdays, I'd drop Lola at nursery school. On my occasional weekend workdays, I'd have Madison watch her or ask my in-laws. As Lola got older, I'd let her stay home alone for short periods while I went to work. Lola and I made a promise. Whenever I went out, I had to tell her my destination by smartphone message and come home before dusk. She was a girl who kept promises, so Madison and I trusted Lola and let her be fairly independent. But there were times when Madison or I would come home for dinner and Lola still wasn't back. Those times, Rilla had dragged her around. Checking GPS, they were usually at the nearest mall. When I called Lola's smartphone, she'd answer in a helpless voice. "Mom, I'm sorry. Rilla says she still wants to play games and won't listen." Her feeble reply made me furious. An hour later, when Rilla and Lola returned, I scolded them. "You're still in elementary school, you know. How long are you going to stay out playing?" Rilla then said in a cheeky tone, "Aunt, I'm being nice by playing with Lola. You should be grateful." Rilla took the bag Lola was holding and went home. When I asked about it later, of course, Rilla had made Lola treat her to everything from drinks to lunch. When Madison called Garrett to protest, he arrogantly said, "That much is no big deal. Don't be so stingy." The selfish Rilla is disliked by other girls, so no one wants to be around her except Lola. If Lola didn't answer the door, Rilla would keep ringing the doorbell. Even if Lola said she had homework, Rilla would forcibly drag her out saying just for a bit. We were troubled, but being relatives, there was a limit to how harshly we could reject Rilla. Dealing with her was a constant concern. Eventually, after starting middle school, Rilla began excessively antagonizing Lola. One winter evening, Rilla stormed over to our place after school, yelling, "Lola, don't you dare talk to him so casually without my permission." "I'm sorry." Lola meekly apologized to Rilla, shouting at the entryway, "My friend said she likes him. She wanted to confess before moving, so I went with her." "What? You actually like him yourself, don't you?" "No, I don't." Lola denied it loudly, which was unusual for her. I abandoned the dinner preparations and dashed from the kitchen to the entryway. I stepped between Rilla and Lola, facing off. "Rilla, that's enough, don't you think?" "Don't butt in, Aunt. This is discipline." Rilla narrowed her eyes. "The nerve of Lola to talk to boys on her own. An ugly girl like her should just stay quiet." Rilla was a flashy beauty, but her nasty personality seeped through her appearance. Lola, on the other hand, may not be classically beautiful, but she's a cute girl with an impressively natural smile. I couldn't forgive Rilla for mocking her like this.
Hey! There are things you should and shouldn't say.
Irritated, I unintentionally raised my voice.
Go home already! Don't ever come to our house again!
As I yelled, Rilla smirked.
But Lola's going to my high school, right?
I was at a loss for words. Lola, who aspires to be an interpreter, plans to attend Rilla's high school next spring for its international program. It's the only school in the state with a sister school in Germany and a well-established exchange program.
I can't wait to have you as my underclassman next year.
Flashing a nasty grin at Lola and me, Rilla left. I was bothered by Rilla's meaningful attitude, but surprisingly, Lola didn't seem to mind.
Rilla is in the general program, right?
The international program building is separate, so we'll hardly meet. Indeed, the two school buildings are on different grounds with some distance between them. Except for students in the same club, students in each program have little interaction. For Lola, who has loved German since childhood, giving presentations and entering essay contests to hone her skills, getting into that school is the first step toward her dream. She probably can't be bothered by Rilla's snide remarks. However, a while after the new year, Lola visibly lost her energy. She hardly ate, and even when spoken to, she seemed dazed. At first, I thought she must be sleep-deprived from studying late at cram school with entrance exams coming up. But sometimes Lola would give me a look as if she wanted to say something, or start to say something but stop.
You haven't seemed well lately.
You look pale too. Is something troubling you? When I asked, Lola forced a smile and denied it.
No, it's nothing. You know, I'm just nervous with the entrance exam coming up.
If that's all, then good. But if anything's wrong, tell me. Mom's always here to listen.
Yeah. Thanks.
Lola seemed preoccupied, but stubbornly refused to open up. However, even after getting into her desired school, Lola's condition didn't improve. Did something happen at school? Even when I asked, she weakly denied it. On days off, she'd shut herself in her room all day. She'd slowly come down the stairs only at mealtimes, but always leave more than half uneaten. Madison and I were wondering if it was time to take her to a psychiatrist. That's when Garrett called Madison. Huh? A vacation? There are events too? Madison put it on speakerphone so I could hear as I prepared dinner in the kitchen.
You know, Lola got into Rilla's high school. And her birthday is coming up. Mom suggested we all eat something nice together to celebrate both.
Garrett's explanation made sense to me. It was just like my mother-in-law Katie, who sends Lola a birthday card every year, to come up with this idea.
We'll meet there and go our separate ways after. Other than dinner, each family can look at the ocean, go to events, do whatever they want.
Right. I'll discuss it with Lola and get back to you later. Leaving the response pending, he hung up for now. At dinner, when I mentioned the trip to Lola at the table, a faint sparkle returned to her hollow eyes. Will we have separate rooms for each family?
Of course. Look, you can see the ocean from the rooms. The sea at night is romantic too.
When I showed her pictures of the ocean view at the destination, Lola's eyes widened. Mom, can we sleep together?
Sure, that's fine.
Then I want to go. And so the vacation with my in-laws and Garrett's family was decided. Unfortunately, it didn't go peacefully. The sea breeze caressing our cheeks and the endless scenic views didn't seem to console Lola's depressed mood. As Garrett's family made a huge fuss taking endless pictures of Rilla, Lola watched with a cold gaze. She smiled for just a moment eating gelato on the cafe terrace or at meals. But after a little while, her expression would darken again. It seemed I had no choice but to wait until Lola and I were alone in the room for her to confide in me. That evening, gathered in the spacious dining room with my in-laws and Garrett's family, we enjoyed fresh seafood together.
Congratulations on getting in! And happy birthday!
The underage Lola and Rilla poured orange juice into their glasses and toasted with the adults' beers.
They grow up so fast, starting high school in the spring. Lola's finally going to be Rilla's underclassman, huh?
Swayed by my in-laws' smiles, Lola's face also brightened. With Eleanor and Rilla in front of their grandparents, even they refrained from their usual snide remarks for once. After finishing the meal, as promised, I went to the room together with Lola.
Wow, it's so pretty!
I let out an unintentional gasp as I looked up at the night sky. The round moon shone brightly overhead, its reflection glimmering on the sea's surface. But Lola still wore a gloomy expression. After a while, Lola began to speak heavily.
Mom, what is it?
I asked nonchalantly.
I think I'm pregnant. What?
Not understanding, I asked again. In a small but clear voice, Lola said the words.
I think I'm going to have a baby.
I stared at Lola's face. Then, tears welled up in Lola's eyes and spilled down her cheeks.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mom.
Calm down, I told myself. Confused, I asked questions. Did you take a test? Have you been to the hospital? Lola shook her head weakly.
I took a home test and it was positive. I haven't gone to the hospital yet.
Then let's go to the hospital after the trip. It could be a mistake. Lola looked at me with surprise.
Mom, you're not mad?
Getting angry won't solve anything. I pulled Lola's head close and stroked it gently. Thank you for telling me. You must have been so scared and anxious. Lola burst into heavy sobs. Poor thing. I felt like crying too. By the way, Lola, can I ask who the father is? Of course, it takes two to make a baby. I had absolutely no idea. Her shoulders shaking, Lola choked out the words.
I'll tell you everything, just give me a little time.
Okay. Let me know when you've collected your thoughts. I conveyed that, trying not to get emotional. In any case, let's go to the hospital once we're back from the trip. We can think about the future after that. Even if Lola ends up as a single mother, Madison and I will support her and figure it out somehow. Looking a bit more at peace, Lola went to the hotel shop just as Madison returned from outside. When I told him about the pregnancy, he was even more shaken than I was, but came to the same conclusion. I had no idea Lola had a boyfriend either. Tomorrow, I'll try to casually ask her about him. After thinking a bit, Madison said with a troubled look, It's hard to imagine our cautious Lola doing something reckless like that. And she might have used the pregnancy test wrong.
Yes. Please try asking her too.
In any case, as her parents, we'll be on Lola's side. That's the decision we reached. The next evening, after enjoying a lavish dinner, Madison invited Lola for a walk along the beach. With the sea breeze chilly, they put on jackets and headed out. As I was sipping liqueur I bought at the grocery store, gazing at the full moon and night sea from the window of the hotel that allowed outside food and drink, my smartphone suddenly rang. Answering the call, the person identified himself as an EMT from the city hospital. My heart raced with a bad premonition. Your husband and daughter were brought in. Can you come right away? I nearly stopped breathing. Grabbing only my smartphone and wallet, I dashed out of the hotel and hurried to the car. I have no memory of where or how I drove, but I found myself at the hospital. In front of a door with a red light indicating treatment in progress, I sat slumped on a bench in the dimly lit hallway when the police arrived. Showing me their badges and confirming my identity, they spoke to me in stiff tones. Please listen calmly. It was a murder-suicide.
What?
It appears your husband pushed your daughter off a cliff into the sea, then jumped in himself. The blood drained from my body and I began to tremble.
That has to be some kind of mistake.
We have actual eyewitness accounts. The chilling words nearly sent me into a panic. However, when we questioned others, we heard different accounts. We're investigating thoroughly now. After asking me a few more questions, the officers left. A while later, the ER doors opened and Madison and Lola appeared.
Madison, Lola. You're okay.
I tried to run to them, but my knees buckled and I collapsed on the spot. As I started crying, Lola teared up too.
Mom, I'm so sorry for worrying you. Dad and I just got some scrapes.
Right after we fell, local fishermen rescued us. We briefly passed out from swallowing seawater. Madison's gentle smile convinced me. There's no way Madison would push Lola off a cliff. It had to be a mistake. The two had bandages wrapped around their scraped arms and legs. Miraculously, they got away with just bruises. They got CT scans done and nothing seemed abnormal.
Oh right, Mom. There's no baby.
What? Lola told me sheepishly as I looked on in surprise.
I had them check if the baby was okay. Turns out I'm not pregnant. My period was just late. Sorry for causing a big fuss.
Madison and I looked at each other and laughed, the tension draining from our bodies. Oh, is that so? That's a relief. My in-laws, who had been out, also rushed to the hospital with Garrett's family. Garrett and his family were yawning hugely, but my in-laws checked that Madison and Lola were safe and calmed down. While Madison and Lola went to pay the bill and my in-laws went to the hospital shop, Rilla and Eleanor approached me. They whispered in my ear as I grew wary.
Lola's an idiot, isn't she?
Huh?
She thinks she got pregnant just from getting cozy with her boyfriend. What a bird brain.
As I looked on in shock, Rilla laughed creepily too.
When we gave her a toy pregnancy test, she totally freaked thinking it was real. Her pale, crying face was hilarious.
So these two were the cause. The moment I realized, fury welled up in me. I clenched my teeth and glared at Rilla and Eleanor. But I couldn't very well yell at them in the hospital, so I desperately held back my anger. Rilla had jerked us around so much until now. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it since we were cousins. Being close in age and the same gender, I had a faint hope they might get along someday. But I'd reached my limit. I won't forgive this. Rilla and Eleanor. I'll make you regret making me truly angry. The next day, after finishing breakfast with Madison and Lola in the hotel dining room, I went home briefly to get something. Returning to the hotel, I called my in-laws and Garrett's family to our room.
What is it? We're checking out at noon. I'm busy getting ready to go.
Garrett was in a foul mood after oversleeping and scrambling through his meal. Seeing Madison and Lola lined up, he seemed to want to make a snide remark and smirked.
But man, Madison, that's awful. Sure, I'd freak out too if Rilla got pregnant, but I wouldn't push her off a cliff. If that happened to me, you'd probably punch the guy. Ugh. Oh, yeah, that's more likely.
As Garrett and his family laughed, my in-laws wore sad expressions beside them. Stop that. There's no way Madison would do such a thing.
Hey, you never know, right?
I turned a sharp gaze on Garrett's family. Garrett, where did you hear that rumor?
Yesterday, some fishermen picking up trash on the beach were talking about it. Right, Rilla? Yep,
Rilla replied, sounding delighted.
when Mom and I went for a walk in the evening, the fishermen were talking. They said they saw a father and daughter arguing. After that, the father pushed the girl off, then jumped into the sea himself.
That has to be about Madison and Lola.
Someone must have seen them and spread the rumor.
Did you even tell the police that way? Eleanor nodded at my question.
Of course. But Madison, you told the police you didn't do it, right?
Actually, after returning to the hotel from the hospital, the police showed up again and Madison and Lola told them everything that happened last night. Obviously.
I didn't push Lola off or anything. I told the police that too,
Madison explained, sounding fed up.
but there are eyewitness accounts.
Lola, someone pushed you off, right?
I was definitely pushed, but there's no way Dad would do that.
Eleanor shrugged at Lola, getting worked up.
I get you want to protect your family, but
Come to think of it, Eleanor,
the principal of Lola's high school lives in this town, right?
Eleanor broke into a cold sweat and Rilla turned pale.
Really? I had no idea. Wow, Aunt, you sure know a lot.
Their reactions seemed to say, "How the heck do you know that too?" which amused me.
After I got back from the hospital in the evening, Lola and I asked around the fishermen while helping them clean up trash on the beach.
Rilla and Eleanor exchanged glances at my words. They were clearly shaken. They obviously hadn't expected us to go that far. Apparently, the ones spreading rumors that Madison pushed Lola into the sea were a beautiful mother-daughter pair rarely seen around these parts. Lola said, eyeing the fidgeting Eleanor with an unusually stern tone.
I've been thinking about why they would do such a thing. They must have wanted to spread nasty gossip so that I'd get rejected by the school.
Katie furrowed her brow.
So you're saying this was the work of someone holding a grudge against Lola? But for a prank, this is going too far. Madison could face assault charges, you know, my father-in-law Alvin said indignantly.
I explained to him. They probably thought the charges would be cleared if the police investigated. As long as the school denied my admission, they would have been satisfied. Their real goal was to pull an elaborate trick to harass Lola, right? As I glared at Eleanor and Rilla, my in-laws and Garrett went wide-eyed with shock. When Lola came to you two for advice, you pretended to listen sympathetically but then played a malicious prank on her. You made her think she was pregnant, didn't you?
What? Rilla and them are the reason Lola thought she was pregnant? What did you do to Lola?
Even when questioned by my in-laws, Eleanor and Rilla just sullenly looked away. Judging by how dumbfounded Garrett seemed, he clearly hadn't known anything about it either. Realizing there was nowhere left to run, Eleanor and Rilla sighed in exasperation and reluctantly confessed.
Yeah, we were just messing with her a bit. We didn't think she'd actually believe it though.
The two of them said with a laugh.
I mean, getting pregnant just from some kissing and hugging? What kindergarten-level knowledge? I knew that too. I was just double-checking that my period was late, that's all. But then you two said with a straight face you're definitely pregnant.
Lola desperately explained, her face beet red.
I have a boyfriend, but I knew I couldn't be pregnant. So I figured it was just exam stress making me feel sick. That's what I told you, remember? I thought Mom would worry if I asked her, and since you're girls too, you'd give me advice. But you insisted it was morning sickness.
Rilla and Eleanor listened to Lola's story while laughing mockingly. Furious, I shared what Lola had told me.
Lola said you told her some women can get pregnant just from a little physical contact with a guy.
Why don't you take a test just in case, and made her use a gag gift pregnancy test. Recalling that moment, Eleanor and Rilla burst out laughing.
We didn't think she'd take it seriously. It was so hard not to laugh. Lola always acts so high and mighty. It was hilarious seeing her pale and flustered face.
I glared hatefully at Rilla and Eleanor as they fell over cackling on the floor. Lola trusted you enough to confide in you. How could you treat her like that? Rilla looked at me, the corner of her mouth twisting.
I've always hated her guts. Since we're cousins, she always gets compared to me. Being class rep, winning debate competitions, getting good grades, that ugly girl acts so full of herself.
She spat resentfully.
I told Mom and I would go with her to the hospital, and not to tell Auntie Aaliyah yet. But then yesterday in the hallway, I overheard Uncle Madison talking to Lola.
Oh? What did he say?
That they shouldn't put much strain on her body, so maybe they should go for a short walk and come back. When I realized she'd betrayed us, I got so pissed.
Yep, that's why we spread the rumor that Madison pushed Lola in. Eleanor added gleefully.
Word spreads fast in a small town. I'm sure it would reach the principal's ears. I hoped she'd get rejected from the high school she always wanted to go to and be utterly crushed.
Appalled, I said to the snickering Rilla and Eleanor. But you know, pushing someone into the sea is a crime. You didn't realize that?
No way, even we wouldn't go that far. Right, Rilla? Yeah. You got any proof?
I smiled at the two of them, looking so self-assured. We got eyewitness testimony when asking around.
What? You're lying.
Rilla and Eleanor were visibly shaken. It's true. Apparently, two long-haired women snuck up behind Madison and Lola.
It was someone else.
Eleanor promptly shouted. Sorry, but that won't fly. You two really stand out, you know. There was a full moon last night, so it was bright. Isn't that right? I turned to face the doorway and called out. Three well-built fishermen, tanned black by the sun, nodded in agreement.
When did they?
The fishermen spoke one after another, ignoring the perplexed Eleanor and Rilla.
Yep, no doubt it was these two. The beautiful mother-daughter pair was burned into my memory. They were causing a ruckus, saying the dad had apparently pushed his daughter in and to call an ambulance.
The men nodded.
They were going around telling everyone who came to see what the commotion was. Saying in this weirdly detailed way that the dad got mad his daughter was pregnant and pushed her into the sea. They were also asking folks if the principal of some academy really lives around here.
Seeing Eleanor and Rilla's faces, I could tell the memories were vividly coming back to them. The fishermen divulged even more detailed testimonies than when they talked to me.
Shut up. Don't talk so much. But it's the truth, you know. Yeah, that's right.
Eleanor and Rilla gnashed their teeth in frustration at the nonchalant fisherman. To think that the beauty you've been boasting about would backfire like this. I thanked the fisherman while glancing sideways at Eleanor and Rilla, who had grim expressions, and sent them home. I suddenly noticed that my in-laws, who had been silent until now, were seething with anger. Even my usually gentle in-laws seemed to be furious this time. Then, Garrett, who had been silent for a while, voiced his question. I know you guys despised Lola. I'm not particularly surprised, but... He cut off his words and tilted his head. I was just wondering how you happened to have a pregnancy test prank kit on hand. I didn't even know such things were sold online. Rilla also asked Eleanor.
I was curious too. Hey Mom, why did you have that thing?
Eleanor's face instantly stiffened.
Of course, I bought it to use on your dad.
But you always say that having just Rilla is enough? Well, in front of the troubled Eleanor, I thrust the bundle of photos at Garrett. It seems like there's demand for Eleanor. Other than you, Garrett. Garrett looked at the photos, utterly shocked. He snatched the bundle of photos from me, and also grabbed the documents from the detective, spreading them all over the large table and scrutinizing every detail. Madison let out an exasperated sigh in place of the speechless Garrett.
Geez, what are you doing, Eleanor?
My in-laws and Rilla, who peeked at the photos, were also surprised and dumbfounded. No wonder, as the scenes clearly showed Eleanor arm in arm with a young man, smiling as they entered and exited a hotel. Last year, I saw Eleanor going in and out of a hotel. So I hired a detective to investigate her conduct. I thought it might come in handy someday. Eleanor glared at me with a fierce expression.
Hiding and investigating someone. You have a really nasty personality, don't you?
Oh please, I'm no match for you, Eleanor. After crossing her arms and confronting me for a while, Eleanor scoffed through her nose. It seemed she decided to act defiant now that it had come to this.
You're just as stupid as Lola, aren't you? What did you say? You act like an elite, but you never even noticed that I was cheating all over the place. Do you think it's not possible because you're so confident in yourself? Deluded self-confidence is scary, isn't it?
She hurled sarcastic remarks at Garrett, whose face had turned red, with an arrogant attitude.
What are you dissatisfied with about me? Unlike at Madison's place, I haven't let you lack for money, and you have a cute daughter. You're a housewife just like you wanted, right? What more do you want?
Eleanor looked at Garrett, who was burning with anger, with a contemptuous gaze.
You're 51, I'm only 42. I married you for the money but soon regretted it. I thought it'd be a waste to be tied to one husband when I'm this young and beautiful. Don't screw with me.
Even in the face of Garrett's anger, Eleanor showed no sign of being intimidated.
If you don't like it, want a divorce? Fine, but Rilla will come with me, won't she? Because she likes mommy more than daddy. Right?
Eleanor smiled triumphantly.
I've been getting lots of allowance from the guys I tricked by pretending to be pregnant too. That pregnancy test is really handy. It was a miscalculation that someone saw me pushing you two into the sea. But just testimonies probably aren't enough to decisively arrest me.
At that line, I stopped the recording app on my smartphone. I immediately called the police. Yes, the culprit who pushed her husband and daughter into the sea has confessed. I recorded the audio evidence too. After hanging up, I said to the dumbfounded Eleanor with a smile, I found out one more thing during the investigation into your conduct. Turns out you were pressing your affair partners by saying I got pregnant and extorting money for surgery from them. That's... Eleanor was at a loss for words. But with it firmly recorded, she probably can't make excuses anymore. Eleanor fell silent for a bit, then gave a strained smile.
I just remembered an errand, so I'll head home first.
The moment she opened the door, she ran into two police officers.
Oh? Where are you going? You're suspected of assault and also being sued for fraud. Could you please accompany us to the station? Assault? Pushing them into the sea was just a joke. It was an ebb tide at the time.
The police officers placated the protesting Eleanor with a practiced air.
Yes, we'll hear the rest at the station. You too, young lady. Huh? Me too?
The police told the shocked Rilla.
Multiple witnesses say they saw two women approaching the couple. Mom's the one who planned and carried it out. I had nothing to do with it.
Eleanor exploded at Rilla's assertion.
You're trying to pin the crime on me? We'll ask you at the station.
Now, let's go. The police urged Eleanor and Rilla and left the hotel. How did it come to this? Madison consoled Garrett, who had slumped to the floor, with sympathy. You always let Rilla run wild and do as she pleased since she was little. It seems you were so smitten that you didn't say anything even when Eleanor was out partying at night. This is the bed you made for yourself. Garrett, who normally would have snapped back at Madison, seemed to lack the energy to retort. He just held his head in his hands and let out a small groan of despair. After Eleanor and Rilla were taken in for voluntary questioning, my family and my in-laws checked out of the hotel. Only a haggard Garrett headed straight home, while the rest of us stopped by some tourist attractions on the way back to enjoy the rest of our trip. I had thought my in-laws would be saddened, but it turned out they had long been troubled by Rilla and Eleanor's selfish attitudes as well. I hope the police give them a good talking to, Katie remarked, to which Alvin nodded with a grim expression. Rilla and Eleanor had teamed up to push Madison and Lola off the cliff. Or perhaps it was the work of just one of them. The two tried to blame each other, insisting they hadn't done it, but eyewitness testimonies led to the verdict that they were both guilty. Although Rilla was taken into custody, she was strictly warned and sent home since Madison and Lola didn't want to press criminal charges. Eleanor also received a suspended sentence and settled the matter by paying compensation to Madison and Lola. However, she was sued by multiple people for marriage fraud. Due to the malicious nature of her crimes and lack of remorse, she was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Naturally, Garrett and Eleanor got divorced. Garrett took custody of Rilla. Rilla had pretended to be a good kid at school, but her true colors were revealed with this incident and she was expelled. Afterward, she didn't work part-time and instead played around using the allowance she got from her grandparents. When she ran out, she would pester Garrett for money, so their days were filled with constant quarreling. Since the incident, Rilla stopped harassing Lola. It seemed she had been sternly warned by her grandparents that they would cut ties with her if she caused Lola any more trouble. The honest and obedient Lola was doted on by her grandparents more than ever. While working hard at her studies, Lola also seemed to be enjoying typical dates with her boyfriend. There will likely be all sorts of events regarding romance in the future. I silently vowed to myself to maintain the kind of relationship where Lola could confide in me as a woman if she was ever troubled.
You get it, right? It's a divorce. I'm bored being with you.
I was stunned, unable to utter a single word in response. I had suspected the possibility of him cheating, but I never imagined he would bring up divorce like this.
Why?
I prefer younger women over middle-aged ones. It's as simple as that. His words left me speechless. The only thing I could say was,
"Thank you for everything,"
I told Mike. Then I hugged our son, Henry, tightly. I had a vague idea about Mike's infidelity, so I was prepared to discuss divorce. However, it's something that should be done privately between the two of us. It should never be done in front of our child. And bringing his mistress home was absolutely unacceptable. I felt my anger exploding inside me. If he wants to play dirty, I have no choice but to fight back with everything I've got. It's too late for regrets now. He can cry alone after losing everything. I gave Mike a harsh, piercing look. My name is Rala. I work for an interior design company. I've always loved interior design, so I have no major complaints about my job. In my personal life, I married Mike when I was 31, and we were blessed with a son, Henry. I'd like to say my life has been perfect, but that's not entirely true. I'm dealing with a huge problem, and the cause is Mike. I work for the company Mike runs, but his management skills are somewhat lacking. To make matters worse, he seems to be having an affair with some woman.
I wanted to build a happy family, but maybe it's better to get a divorce now.
13 years into our marriage. At the age of 44, I find myself at a crossroads in life. Though I'm considering divorce now, it was the furthest thing from my mind when we first got married. In fact, I believed meeting Mike was my destiny. Our paths crossed at the bank where I started working after graduating high school. It was in the midst of a recession, so I felt lucky to land a job with just a high school diploma. I was grateful and poured myself into my work. A few years later, Mike visited the bank for the first time.
I need to discuss something about my company's account.
Certainly, I replied, maintaining my usual professional demeanor. Despite my matter-of-fact tone, Mike complimented me on my service.
Thank you for your courteous assistance,
he said before leaving. What a smooth operator, I thought to myself. A few days later, on a Sunday, I ran into Mike at an interior decor store. You work at the bank, right?
The other day.
Mike's face filled with concern.
Did I do something wrong? No, I'm here on personal business today. Looking for a table for my home. Oh, I see.
Mike smiled, his expression softening. From there, he was quite loquacious. He enthusiastically discussed the store's products with me. Normally, I might have found such eagerness off-putting, but not this time. Perhaps it was our shared love for interior design. As our conversations continued, I found myself drawn to Mike. I began frequenting the store on my days off, and before I knew it, we were married. After the wedding, I quit my job at the bank to become a housewife. Mike's store dealt exclusively in high-end items. He seemed to be doing well financially, so I assumed the business was thriving. That's what I thought. However, I was about to uncover a shocking truth. A few months into our marriage, Mike asked me to visit the store. He wanted me to help organize the warehouse, but the moment I stepped inside, I was stunned.
What in the world?
It's just inventory.
This much inventory?
Piles upon piles of expensive, imported interior goods filled the space. Sensing something was amiss, I hastily checked the store's financial records. Just as I suspected, the management was a mess. Mike had been purchasing excessive amounts of luxury items, and most of them weren't selling. The store was operating at a complete loss. Looking back through the records, the losses began 2 years ago. When I asked the reason, it was when Mike took over the business. Prior to that, his late grandfather had been running the store. It became clear that Mike lacked business acumen. I scrambled to turn things around. First, I convinced him to stop selling the high-end inventory. Then, I reintroduced custom-made items.
Custom orders again? Communicating with the customers is time-consuming.
Mike grumbled.
They take time, but they're more profitable. Better than buying luxury goods that don't sell.
But
we need to go back to what worked in the past until we're out of the red.
Of course, there were no guarantees this would work. But we live in a small, rural town. Many of the town's residents have lived here for years, and customers from Mike's grandfather's days still call this place home. If we could win back those old clients. With that singular focus, I continued to support Mike.
I was running the store my way, but
Mike grumbled, but thanks to my efforts, we managed to turn things around. However, we didn't become significantly profitable, merely escaping the red.
We need to make our next move, or else.
Left to Mike's devices, the store would quickly go bankrupt again. Our employees would be out on the streets, and our own livelihood would be threatened. After much thought, I decided to put my banking experience to use.
From now on, I'll handle the administrative work. Leave all the back-end tasks to me. Then what am I supposed to do? As the president, you focus on sales, Mike. You have a strong sales ability, so put it to work.
Mike has a way with words. If he concentrates on sales, he should be able to produce results. Sure enough, Mike secured contract after contract. He also started a leasing business for the high-end inventory. And our performance skyrocketed. In no time, we had regained our former glory. Now we should be stable. Or so I thought. Mike dropped a bombshell. With the workload increasing, I think we should hire more employees. I agreed with that opinion, but his next words left me shocked. For starters, I'm thinking of making Mom an executive.
Susan?
Got a problem with that? Mike twisted his mouth. I hesitated, at a loss for words. Recently, we've had more customers and an increase in leasing and custom orders. That's why I'd been considering hiring more salespeople and account executives. I thought Mike would be on the same page, but I tried to gently argue my case.
Before adding executives, shouldn't we try increasing our sales or customer service staff? But Mom said she wants to help out at the store.
Mike's father passed away many years ago, leaving Susan to live alone. Maybe she has too much time on her hands. Or perhaps she's blinded by the money from our improved performance. Either way, she's not someone the company needs. I tried to persuade Mike to abandon the idea of hiring Susan. But right then, I discovered I was pregnant. Seizing the opportunity, Susan suggested,
"It'll be tough working while pregnant, right? Let me handle things for the meantime."
"Do you have work experience?"
"Don't worry. I used to work before I got married."
"And how long ago was that?" I couldn't bring myself to ask. Left with no choice, I replied,
"I'll do my best for as long as I can."
But Susan wasn't happy with that. She started spreading rumors to relatives and neighbors.
"My daughter-in-law is money hungry. She's so shameless, worming her way into my son's company."
Sure, money is important, but I only wanted to fix the store's tendency to operate at a loss. It's not like I'm working for the money. When I tried to argue that point, Susan retorted,
"Huh? Are you bad-mouthing Mike?" "No, that's not what I meant. A good wife supports her husband. Keep your unnecessary opinions to yourself."
Faced with her scolding, I had no choice but to fall silent. As my due date approached, I ended up having to leave work for the delivery. With me gone, it was inevitable that Susan would join the company. I had a lot I wanted to say, but I decided to hold my tongue. Some time later, I gave birth to Henry. After a few years of raising him, I returned to work. But it was too late. In my absence, the store's management had deteriorated. Of course, I had done everything I could before taking leave. So, the sales themselves weren't bad. The problem was with the financial statements. Despite the consistently strong sales, the bottom line was terrible. The culprits were undoubtedly Mike and Susan. They had been spending money left and right. It wasn't quite embezzlement, but their use of funds was definitely in a gray area. When I tried to talk to them about tightening the purse strings, Susan immediately started complaining.
"How dare you talk back, when you're just an in-law? This is a company matter. Being the daughter-in-law has nothing to do with it." "Is that so? Then let me tell you, a regular employee has no right to talk back to an executive."
At Susan's words, I fell silent. I was also treated as a director, at least in name. So, I wasn't a regular employee. I looked at Mike, hoping he would say something.
"Why are you getting so worked up? Aren't you just tired from raising a kid?"
"Yes, because you don't help out at all, Mike." I had intended to retort. But apparently, that struck a nerve with Mike. He raised his voice in anger.
What's with that attitude? If it's so hard, why don't you just quit your job?
If I quit the company now, it would definitely go bankrupt. For Henry's sake, I had to avoid that at all costs. As I remained silent, Mike laughed triumphantly. Then, with a nasty grin, he said,
If you don't like it, shut up and do as I say. I understand.
To protect the company, I had no choice but to keep working. I decided to quietly obey Mike and the others. As time passed, Henry started elementary school. By then, he had become less dependent. Thanks to that, I was able to focus on work. However, the company's financial situation didn't improve. Of course, it was due to Mike and Susan's wasteful spending. I also began to worry about Mike's lack of attention to Henry. He didn't show up to Henry's sports days nor parent-teacher conferences. Sometimes, he wouldn't even come home.
Could he be having an affair? The problems just keep piling up.
I found myself thinking that way more often. But even if I confronted Mike, I couldn't get the truth.
You know there's talk of redeveloping the area in front of the station, right? I'm just working hard to open a store in the new building. Isn't it strange that you can't come home because of that? It's not strange. That's how busy I am.
He would just dodge the question like that. Then, one day, after I got home from work, Henry said to me, I want a soccer ball for my birthday next week.
Oh right, you joined the soccer club, didn't you? I'll make sure to tell Mike. Do you think Dad will go shopping with me?
Henry looked anxious. Instinctively, I stroked Henry's head.
Don't worry. I'll make sure Mike makes time for you. Okay.
I don't think it completely dispelled Henry's anxiety. But it was the best I could do. After that, I brought up Henry's birthday to Mike over and over, both at home and at work.
I get it, you're being annoying,
he said.
You never do anything for him, so at least take the day off for his birthday. Promise me.
Yes. I was still anxious. But for now, I had no choice but to trust Mike. Filled with unease, I welcomed the day of Henry's birthday. I took the day off work and was preparing a meal for Henry when I suddenly noticed Mike getting ready to go out. You're not going to work, are you? I asked, and Mike simply replied that he had a surprise in store. So he was thinking about Henry after all. I felt relieved as I saw Mike off. Soon, the preparations for Henry's birthday celebration were complete. Just then, Mike came home.
I'm back!
Mike's cheerful voice rang out. I wonder what kind of surprise he has. My heart was pounding as I waited for Mike to enter the living room.
Sorry for the wait. Surprise!
Mike introduced the woman standing next to him. A young woman with heavy makeup, holding a large paper bag. She looked familiar to me.
Happy birthday, Henry! A present from your future mom.
The woman handed the bag to Henry. Henry seemed a little perplexed. I could understand how he felt. I also found her words unsettling.
Future mom? What do you mean, Anne?
I addressed the woman in front of me and tilted her head. Huh?
It means exactly what I said.
Her exaggerated gesture irritated me. But then Mike interjected.
What, you still don't get it? Can you explain what's going on? I'm saying Anne is going to marry me and become Henry's new mom.
Mike slapped divorce papers on the table. Then he briefly flashed a marriage registration form from his breast pocket.
You get it, right? It's a divorce.
I'm bored being with you. I was stunned, unable to say a word. I had considered the possibility of him cheating. But I never imagined he would bring up divorce like this.
Why? I prefer younger women over a middle-aged one like you. It's as simple as that.
With those words, there was nothing left to argue. I could only say one thing.
Thank you for everything,
I told Mike. Then I hugged Henry tightly. I had a vague idea about Mike's infidelity. So, I was prepared to discuss divorce. However, it's something that should be done privately between us. It should never be done in front of our child. And bringing his mistress home was absolutely unacceptable. I felt my anger exploding inside me. If he wants to play dirty, I have no choice but to fight back with everything I've got. It's too late for regrets now. He can cry alone after losing everything. I gave Mike a harsh, piercing look. At the same time, I glanced at Anne. Then, with a nasty grin, and started to speak.
What's with that look? You're scaring me. Mike, help me.
Are you okay? My middle-aged wife was being rude. Mike made a gesture as if comforting Anne. His exaggerated actions only fueled my anger. In any case, taking care of the shocked Henry was my top priority right now.
Henry, are you all right?
Yeah.
Then, let's go to Grandpa's house.
For now, I decided to take Henry to my father's place. We'll deal with the rest later.
I'll contact you once I file for divorce. We can discuss compensation after that. Okay?
I told Mike unilaterally and took Henry to his room. While calming him down, I packed a bag with Henry's change of clothes. I'm sorry, Henry, for all of this. I won't let that woman have Henry. As I was thinking that, Henry said something unexpected.
I don't really like Dad anyway. More importantly, Mom, are you okay?
Henry peered at my face with concern. There's no doubt Henry was shocked too. But he wasn't shocked by our divorce. I heard later that he was shocked when Anne said she would become his mother. But at that time, all I could think about was getting Henry out of the house. I quickly left the house with Henry, taking only the bare necessities. We headed straight to my parents' home. When I explained the situation to my parents, they welcomed us warmly. Leaving Henry with my parents, I went to the courthouse. I signed the divorce papers on the spot and submitted them.
Remember this, Mike. You will pay for hurting Henry.
I then went directly to my workplace. It was a holiday, but the store was open. After all, holidays are our busiest times. I greeted the employees in the store and entered the office. Susan was there. In front of several employees, I handed Susan my resignation.
What's this? It's my resignation.
The moment I said that, the office erupted in murmurs. Meanwhile, Susan retorted nonchalantly.
I saw Mike leave with a young woman earlier. Did he perhaps bring up divorce? That's right. I've already filed the divorce papers.
Oh, good for you.
Now we can get rid of the nagging daughter-in-law,
Susan said mockingly. Looking at her, I shot back.
In any case, we're no longer related. Please make sure to tell Mike that.
Fine by me.
We won't have any problems without you around.
Susan's words irritated me. But I tried to leave the office without saying anything back. I noticed the employees were trembling for some reason. As I was wondering why, Mike walked in.
Mom,
I'm getting a divorce and remarrying, Mike announced to Susan as soon as he entered. That's when he noticed I was there. What are you doing here, Rolla?
Just dropping off my resignation.
Oh, I see. That will be a relief. Mike laughed nastily. Behind him, I could see Anne. I glanced at and before turning to Mike.
Repaying the loans will be tough, but do your best, everyone. Loans? What are you talking about?
Mike looked stunned. I sighed and replied, "The company's loans. In other words, debt. You need to pay them back properly."
What? There are loans?
Mike looked at a nearby employee, who nodded slightly. "Yes, there is. You're the president, and you didn't know?"
You said you will handle all the administrative work.
Ah, that's right. Well, let me explain everything before I leave. I went to my desk, turned on my computer, and showed him a file. This is the list of the company's loans. There's a lot, including working capital and equipment investment costs. Mike was shocked when he saw the list. Then, he raised his voice at me.
What the hell is this amount? Why did we take out so many loans?
We had no choice. Because you and Susan kept wasting money on expenses. No matter how much I told them, Mike and Susan never stopped wasting money on unnecessary expenses. I thought this would put a strain on our management. So I temporarily took out loans. After that, I gradually cut expenses and used the profits to repay the loans. That's how I spent years improving the worst financial statements. But that ends today. Starting tomorrow, Mike and the others will have to handle things themselves. And since I'm leaving, I have to give them one more piece of terrible news. About those loans, the repayment deadline is the end of this month.
What? What do you mean? Why do we have to pay them back all at once?
That was the agreement. If I quit, the loans must be repaid immediately. When I took out the loans, I consulted with the bank. But our financial statements were too poor. They said they could lend us a small amount because our sales were good, but they couldn't give us a large loan. So, I thought about it. Should I make do with a small loan? Or should I set up a long-term repayment plan? In the end, I chose the latter. And I used my personal connections to secure loans for the company. In other words, they trusted me when they gave us the loans. So, if I'm gone, there's no guarantee of repayment. That's why I made it so the loans would be due immediately if I quit.
What the hell?
It was the only way. Because you wouldn't cut back on wasting money on expenses. I looked at Mike and Susan alternately. They both quietly averted their gazes. There's no grace period for the loans, so if they demand repayment, you have to pay right away.
What are we supposed to do? We're in the middle of pouring funds into the station front redevelopment project.
I don't care. If you want to avoid bankruptcy, you have no choice but to repay the loans.
Damn it.
Mike slumped to the floor. I glanced at Susan and saw that she was flustered. The sight of them was so comical that I teasingly continued. Make sure you repay the loans before someone intervenes in the management.
What? Intervene in the management?
That's what will happen if you don't repay the loans. Like changing the president or something. I laughed deliberately. Then Mike started trembling. Leaving Mike and the others like that, I walked out of the office. And, who was standing at the entrance, kept staring at me. I returned a smile to her as well. As we passed each other, and muttered,
"Remember this, you lowlife woman."
It was you who cheated, wasn't it? I thought that, but I didn't say it out loud. No matter what, I can't back down now. I hope they fall on hard times and struggle with money. I thought it would turn out that way, but it didn't. Somehow, Mike managed to secure funds from somewhere. The person who gave us the loan contacted me, saying they had been paid back in full. If that's the case, I'll just have to make my next move. I whispered to myself and played my next card for revenge. A few days later, when I went to Mike's house to get my things, Mike was inexplicably waiting for me. Of course, even though Henry's and my belongings were there, we were divorced, so I couldn't just enter the house without permission. That's why I contacted him before going, so I was prepared to be watched. But something seemed off about the situation. He was waiting for me in front of the entrance.
Why are you waiting outside? I had something I wanted to ask you.
Something to ask? When I asked him back, Mike continued with a strangely sullen look on his face.
Ever since you quit, our customers have been steadily decreasing.
Apparently, lease contracts were being canceled one after another since I left the company. Moreover, the number of custom order clients was also decreasing, and contracts that were in progress had been called off.
Isn't that because there's a problem with you?
It goes without saying, but I knew the reason. However, I wasn't about to tell him for free. So, I tried saying that sarcastic remark. Suddenly, Mike started getting angry.
Don't play dumb. This is your doing, right?
What evidence do you have to say that?
Our employees told me. They said most of our current customers are your acquaintances.
As I thought, the employees understand the company's situation better than Mike, the president. In fact, many of our current customers are my acquaintances. And not just casual acquaintances either. Most of them were introduced to us as customers by my uncle on my mother's side, Ben, who runs a business. In other words, it's more like we got the contracts through Ben's connections rather than my own. Naturally, even my relationship with them is tenuous, so if I'm gone, it's practically the same as having no connection at all. Of course, if the company were doing good business, the customers would likely continue their relationship with them. But Mike not only lacks management skills, he's the kind of person who mixes personal feelings into work and makes his own mother an executive. It's only natural to feel uneasy about the company's future prospects. That's probably why the deals are being called off one after another. Too bad for you.
Don't screw with me. You must be saying unnecessary things.
I'm sorry, but I only quit the company.
The contracts were canceled because you lack ability, right?
At my words, Mike was at a loss for words. He glared at me with a bitter expression, so I continued. It's a huge mistake to resent me.
Everything that happened was your doing, Mike. That's not true.
It is true. You're the one running the company, Mike. You're the one who cheated. You're the one who discarded me. Do you realize now how much you were relying on me? Maybe now you understand a little. But even if you realize it now, what once was lost can never be regained. When I expressed my anger, Mike bit his lip, his eyes brimming with tears. I brushed past Mike and entered the house. Then, I packed up my and Henry's belongings. Just as I finished contacting the moving company, Mike muttered something.
Enough already. I'm going to turn things around with the station front redevelopment. Don't come crying to me when I succeed again.
With those words, Mike pushed me out of the house and shut the front door. You're an idiot.
As if I'd give you a chance to make a comeback.
If I'm going to do this, I'll do it thoroughly. I will never forgive Mike and the others. They did this to themselves. I'll just do everything in my power to corner them. With those thoughts in mind, I turned my back on Mike's house. However, it was a big gain to find out what Mike was planning to do to rebuild the company. I should make my moves with that in mind. If it's come to this, I'll use my trump card. I made a phone call to a certain person. A few weeks later, I was visiting a local company with my new boss. A lot had happened around me during those few weeks. First, I demanded compensation from Mike and Ann. Mike complained but agreed to pay the amount I requested. Of course, it was difficult to pay in a lump sum. So, he promised to pay in several installments. On the other hand, and refused to pay the compensation. But as soon as I mentioned going to court, her attitude changed. Apparently, Anne's father decided that going to court would be troublesome. Upon further investigation, it turned out that Anne's father was a real estate agent. He probably didn't want to be seen as having problems with the station front redevelopment. The station front redevelopment project is one of the largest public works projects. The profits are also substantial, so he couldn't ignore it. In the end, Anne's father agreed to pay the compensation to settle the matter.
I'll pay the compensation, so you should agree to Mike remarrying.
Anne said something like that to me, but it has nothing to do with me. I told her to do whatever she wants, and Anne laughed as if she had one. With the divorce issue resolved, I made a fresh start and took on a new job. My first assignment was today's office visit. However, I ran into an unexpected person there.
Huh? Why is Rala here?
Huh? Mike? The person I met at the reception desk of the company I was visiting was Mike, and was standing next to him. I quietly averted my gaze. But it was too late after we had already seen each other. Mike approached me and began to speak with a stern look on his face.
What? Are you still trying to interfere?
That's. Of course, I won't say that I didn't intend to interfere. But I didn't expect to run into him here. At this rate, it will cause trouble for the company we're visiting. And for my boss who accompanied me. I was perplexed. In the midst of this, Mike started complaining.
In the first place, what is a woman like Rala doing in a place like this?
It's for work. I tried to be vague, but Mike wouldn't even allow that.
Work? This is the real estate company that will manage the building being constructed in front of the station for the redevelopment. I know that. Moreover, it's a major player in the real estate industry. There's no point in Rala coming to a branch office of such a company.
Mike laughed next to him and was laughing too. Annoyed, I retorted to Mike.
You're out of place here too, aren't you?
Out of place?
Our company is the largest interior leasing company in this area.
The new building will house hotels and commercial facilities as well. Naturally, that means there will be a high demand for interior design. Mike's company is probably the only one in the area that can meet those needs. And spoke about it in a haughty manner. That may have been true, up until now. But now, as I was thinking that, my boss interjected.
You're Rala's ex-husband, right? I didn't get a chance to greet you at Rala's wedding. Huh? And you are? I'm Ben, Rala's boss. I'm also her uncle.
As soon as Ben said that, Mike's face turned pale. Staring intently at Ben's face, Mike muttered.
Don't tell me, are you the Ben from that famous interior design company? Yes, our company does interior design work, but we also handle fixtures and furniture installation.
It turned out that Ben's business is an interior design company. Painting and wallpapering are part of interior design work. In addition, Ben's company also does furniture installation. Furniture installation refers to the construction of built-in furniture. In that regard, Ben's company also employs furniture craftsmen. Of course, to select furniture that matches the interior, they have many acquaintances who are general furniture craftsmen.
So, in other words, Ben's company also deals with domestically produced interior items. So, you're saying your objective is the same?
Mike asked timidly. I smiled nastily and nodded.
In a broad sense, yes. However, our company will also be doing interior construction work. Wait a minute. Ben's company isn't from around here.
I understand what Mike is trying to say. In fact, Ben's company is not local. It's located in the heart of the city, not in the rural area where we live. That alone makes it unnatural for them to take on this job. That's probably what Mike wanted to say. But there's a reason for that.
Actually, my cute niece got divorced and consulted me about wanting revenge on her ex.
At Ben's words, Mike turned pale. Amid that, Ben continued.
Originally, we were planning to establish a branch office much earlier. But since my niece said she would become a rival to her husband's company.
In other words, even if it's just a part of it, Ben's company has some business operations that overlap with Mike's company. Of course, it's only in terms of handling furniture. Everything else is a completely different industry. But that small overlap was a cause for concern. Ben's company is quite well known. On the other hand, only locals know about Mike's company. If Ben opens a branch office, there's a possibility that customers will be taken away. That's what I thought. So, I made this proposal to Ben.
Mike's company will provide the furniture instead of Ben's company.
Basically, I asked him to treat Mike's company as a local company with ties to Ben's company. Naturally, with the credibility of Ben's company, it was easy to secure contracts at first. That's how I restored the performance of Mike's company by boosting its credibility. After that, I asked Ben's company to hold off on expanding into the area. By doing so, I was protecting Mike's company. But with Mike's infidelity and divorce, I no longer had a reason to protect his company. So, I had Ben expand into the local area and got hired by his company. Of course, since our industries are different, I don't know if it will have an impact on Mike's company. Still, it should disrupt Mike's plan to turn things around with the station front redevelopment. That's what I thought, but the damage seems to be greater than I anticipated. After hearing the sequence of events from me, Mike slumped to the floor. Moreover, he started crying right then and there. It's over. It's all over. Feeling embarrassed, I quickly left the scene with Ben. After that, Mike's company, which had bet on the redevelopment project, quickly went bankrupt. Apparently, in an attempt to capitalize on the redevelopment project, he had been throwing money around left and right. Moreover, he seemed to have been working behind the scenes, even giving money to people who had no authority. All of that turned out to be a waste, and the inability to recover the funds was the cause of the bankruptcy. It also came to light that he had borrowed money from various places to repay the company's loans. These were completely personal loans, so Mike is now being asked to repay a large sum of money. Incidentally, Mike started working as a construction worker at the redevelopment site to pay off his debts. Susan is working with him, and it seems they are supporting each other to pay off the debt. However, Anne, who remarried Mike, claims she was deceived and is fighting with him. Apparently, she has already started preparing for divorce, so it seems, and has no intention of supporting Mike. Putting that aside, and is being asked by her father to repay the compensation she paid me. So, I don't think and will get through this unscathed either. In the end, it looks like everyone has hit rock bottom. In contrast to Mike and the others, who have become so miserable, I am living a happy life. Work at Ben's company is going well too. I feel like Henry is becoming an even better child. On a whim, I asked Henry, who was getting ready to go to school.
Henry, aren't you shocked about your dad? What's this all of a sudden? Do you want to remarry or something?
That's not it. But if he's not shocked, then that's fine. Because right now, Henry is my everything. For Henry's sake, I'll do my best too. Mumbling those words, I left the house together with Henry.
The body was badly damaged, so for sanitary reasons, we've already held the burial. The moment the word sanitary reached my ears, a wave of terror and despair welled up from the depths of my soul. It was Louis, Katie's husband, who informed me that my daughter, Katie, had passed away just yesterday. She had smiled at me. "I'll see you soon," she said. "But now," Louis coldly said, "I'm quite busy, so I'll have to go." Before hanging up the phone, I was left in a daze. I tried calling him back several times to ask about the funeral, but eventually, I was blocked. A chilling fear and overwhelming despair swirled within me. The sense of loss, the feeling of being utterly alone in the world, slowly ate away at my heart. And so, 3 years passed. No matter how much time went by, fragments of Katie remained lodged in my heart. Her presence never left my mind, no matter how much time passed. That day, as I was on my way home from work, as usual, I found myself thinking of Katie without even realizing it. If she were alive, what kind of life would she be living right now? As I was lost in these thoughts, I suddenly noticed someone standing in front of the entrance to my home. A woman, whom I didn't recognize, was just standing there. Her back was slender, and her long hair swayed in the wind. My heart jumped, and I was stunned. At that moment, the woman turned around, and it seemed she had noticed me. "What? No way," I muttered without thinking. "I'm home," she said. The person standing there was Katie, who I had been told died 3 years ago. She looked exactly the same as she had on that day, as if time had stopped, as beautiful as ever. I was overwhelmed with confusion and shock, unable to say a word. "Mom, I'm sorry I'm late," Katie said, tears welling up in her eyes, her voice trembling. "My name is Haley." As I gazed at the sunset outside my window, I found myself immersed in memories. Memories of when I had just given birth to my daughter, Katie. Since the day I lost my husband, Jameson, Katie's father, in an accident, my life had never been the same. A deep scar had been carved into my heart, and I realized just how much his presence had meant to me. His smile, his kindness, how much they had supported me. Every day, I felt the weight of losing him. Time may heal wounds, but this loneliness, this emptiness, remains lodged in my chest like a heavy stone. Years have passed since then, but his smile, his voice, they're still as vivid in my mind as if it all happened yesterday. Remembering them should bring me joy, but instead, it fills me with sorrow. The joy I felt when Katie was born, and the loneliness that followed still battle within my heart. Even now, after my husband's death, I made up my mind to raise Katie on my own. I worked tirelessly for Katie's sake and to carry on his memory. All my efforts were focused on living the irreplaceable moments of the present with my beloved Katie. I have to keep going. Keep going. At some point, this word became my catchphrase. Not that I said it to anyone in particular, but to motivate myself, I'd whisper, "Must keep going. I can do it, thanks to my hard work." Katie studied diligently and got into a good university. She made it through both her studies and social life without any major issues, graduating successfully. After graduation, she started living with her boyfriend Louis, and I began living alone in my apartment. At first, I felt a bit lonely, but Katie would come check in on me from time to time, and we talked frequently on the phone, so I wasn't really lonely at all. However, each time I realized Katie no longer needed me to take care of her, I felt the tension in my shoulders release, and a small sense of emptiness crept in. No more need to keep pushing myself. Yet, for some reason, that thought made me feel lonely. "Mom, I'm bringing Louis over this weekend." One day, she told me that out of the blue over the phone. It was the moment I'd been waiting for. Katie introducing her boyfriend to me meant that she was ready to take the next step in her life. This was it truly. I didn't have to keep pushing myself anymore. With mixed feelings of excitement and a hint of sadness, I awaited the weekend. As I prepared for Katie and Louis' visit, a mixture of anxiety and anticipation swirled within me. When the doorbell rang, my heart raced. I hurried to open the door. Standing there was Katie's familiar smile, along with Louis, whom I was meeting for the first time. He was tall and looked like a kind young man, with a gentle smile. As I felt a bit of relief at his appearance, I also tried to sense what might be hiding behind his eyes. "Hello, I'm Louis. Thank you for always taking care of Katie." Louis's calm voice put me at ease. He smiled, showing his neatly aligned, clean teeth, and squinted slightly as he looked at me. "I'm Haley. Thank you for coming today." I couldn't help but return his smile. After finishing the meal preparations, the three of us sat around the table. Katie listened to Louis's stories with a delighted expression, and my heart warmed as I watched them. Seeing Katie so happy made me happier than anything else. Louis, too, watched over Katie with kindness, matching his mood to her smile. Having started living with my husband after getting married, I had no experience with cohabitation before marriage, so I couldn't imagine what challenges and struggles the two of them might face. But as long as they were living happily together, I thought that was a wonderful thing. After the meal, I told Katie, "Take your time and relax," and started washing the dishes. The two of them spoke in voices too soft for me to hear. Seeing Louis gaze at Katie with such tenderness gave me a sense of relief. However, I couldn't stop noticing the faint dark circles under her eyes, and the thought stayed in my mind. Katie, is she overworked? That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't help but think about Katie. I was happy that she was preparing to take the next steps in her life, but I couldn't shake the underlying anxiety in my heart. "Katie, I hope you'll be happy. I'm probably being overprotective, but overprotective or not, she is the most important person in the world to me." I closed my eyes, silently praying, and slowly drifted off to sleep. In my dreams, joyful memories flashed before me one after another, eventually fading away. When I woke, the stillness around me felt oddly lonely. A few months later, I received an unexpected call from Katie. Hearing her voice made me feel like I was continuing a dream. "I want to introduce Louis to you. Not as my boyfriend this time, but as my fiancé." Though she spoke over the phone, I could hear the happiness in her voice. I felt a mix of surprise and excitement, eagerly looking forward to their visit. On the day of their second visit, Louis showed up wearing a suit. From the very first time we met, I had a good impression of him. He stood tall, radiating both politeness and kindness. From what she had told me, Louis came from a prominent family in the local community. Raised in a wealthy household, his demeanor was gentle, and he treated Katie with great respect and care. "I'd like to welcome Katie into my family," Louis said. For a moment, tension flickered in my heart. There was something heavy about the way he phrased it. I couldn't help but probe further, trying to understand the meaning behind his words. "What do you mean by your family?" I asked. Louis's expression grew serious as he looked directly at me. "My family has been known as community leaders for generations. As the eldest son, there's an expectation that I must take a wife, and this belief is deeply ingrained in our family. To meet their expectations, I want to ask Katie to take on that role." His words sounded almost like a formal speech. The first thing that crossed my mind was, do people refer to themselves as community leaders? And what does it even mean to be a leader of the community? Though many questions arose, I decided to accept that families of certain stature had their own ways of thinking. Katie would take his family name, and from the way the conversation was going, it sounded like they would be living together with his family. After a brief moment of consideration, I agreed. It was only natural to put Katie's happiness first and respect her choices. But when I saw the clouded look on Katie's face, I grew concerned. "Katie, are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm okay," she replied, though her answer wasn't very convincing. That night, Katie asked if she could stay over at my apartment, something she hadn't done in a long time. It was 10 p.m. Normally, I'd be in bed by then, but Katie pulled out a small bottle of whiskey from her bag. "Will you have a drink with me?" She smiled. We sat together in the corner of the kitchen, relying on the soft, dim lighting. We filled large glasses, not quite suited for whiskey, with plenty of ice, and drank it slowly, undiluted. Neither of us really liked alcohol that much. She seemed like she was forcing herself to drink the whiskey. I couldn't help but notice that the dark circles under her eyes had deepened since the last time I saw her. "If there's something you're worried about, don't hesitate to tell me," I said. "I'm fine. I'm just probably a little nervous about the upcoming wedding," she replied, with a slightly sad expression. I chose not to press further. It's her first wedding after all, so it's natural she would feel anxious. Things won't be the same as just continuing their cohabitation. Katie will be living at his family's house. I couldn't quite picture it, but I imagined something like those strict mother-in-law scenarios you see in movies or dramas, where she wakes up early to make breakfast. Then I shook my head. That's outdated thinking. There's no way families like that still exist today. "I'm hungry," she murmured, so I made her a cup of instant noodles, her favorite one. When she was little, we used to split the noodles and toppings in half to share them. Seeing her now, able to finish an entire cup on her own, made me feel just a little lonely. We ate cup noodles and drank the strong whiskey, chatting late into the night. I wondered if one day we would look back on nights like this and feel nostalgic. Katie left the next morning, but she called me a few times after that. She talked about how busy she was with wedding preparations, how hard she was working on cooking and laundry, all small, mundane things, but hearing her voice always put me at ease. A few weeks after Louis was introduced as her fiancé, "We won't be having a family meeting," she told me. I had been nervous, thinking that such a prestigious family would naturally hold a formal meeting, so I felt a little deflated. There was a time when I wondered if we weren't having one because I was a single mother. Maybe I was being a bit self-conscious. In the end, even as the wedding day approached, I never got the chance to meet Louis's parents. It seemed the first time we would exchange greetings would be at the wedding itself, and I was anxious. The day before the wedding, Katie came to my house. Smiling, she said, "I want to spend my last night as a single woman with you." I was surprised, but seeing her face brought me relief. Spending a quiet night together in my small apartment didn't sound so bad. "Mom, what's married life like?" she asked. "Well, it's different for every couple, so it's hard to say," I answered. For me, having lost my husband so early on, the memories of what married life was like were now distant. The busy days of raising her blurred the time I spent with my husband, leaving those memories somewhat idealized. From tomorrow, a new chapter in Katie's life will begin. I'm sure Dad is watching from heaven, wishing for her happiness. Yay, I hope so. Katie lost her dad when she was very young, so she probably doesn't remember much about him. Even so, there's something I want to tell her. Your dad always had such a happy look on his face whenever he saw you as a little girl. We lost track of time as we talked about all sorts of things. I shared the joys and challenges of married life, memories of my husband, hoping to encourage Katie as she imagined her own happy future. When the melody from the clock on the wall started to play, we both fell silent, our eyes drifting away. Katie then said, "I think I should get going." So I decided to walk her to the door. It feels like time just flew by. It's kind of lonely, isn't it? Don't worry, Mom. Even after I'm married, I'll come visit you all the time. Her words, and that slightly tired smile of hers, tugged at my heart. After seeing Katie off, I kept replaying her words. "I'll come visit you all the time," over and over in my mind, praying for her happiness. Yet, deep down, I felt something unsettling. Maybe it's just a mother's intuition, but Katie's occasional, fleeting sad expressions didn't seem to be just pre-wedding jitters. Is she really okay? That night, I thought about Katie for a long time. What must be going on in her heart as her wedding day approached us? These thoughts stayed with me as I drifted off to sleep. The next morning, I woke up early and took a shower. I did my hair and put on my makeup. I had already booked a taxi a few days ago, and it would come to pick me up right on time. Taking a taxi felt like a bit of a luxury, but Katie and Louis had arranged everything for me. They even prepared my dress at the venue, so I wasn't planning to bring anything with me. As I was getting ready, my smartphone rang. It was a call from Louis. The bride and groom should already be at the venue getting ready. So what could this be about? Worried, I answered the call. "Good morning, Louis. Is everything all right?" I tried to respond cheerfully, thinking he might just be feeling nervous before the big day. But Louis's voice was unusually heavy. "Haley, I'm sorry. Something terrible has happened." My heart started to race. At that moment, I was filled with dread, terrified of what he might say next. "Katie was in an accident last night. She passed away." I couldn't immediately grasp what Louis was saying. It felt as if time had frozen, and I was left speechless. Louis continued speaking. "It was at a crosswalk, on her way home. She was hit by a car. The damage to her body was severe, and due to sanitary concerns, we've already laid her to rest." As soon as the word sanitary hit my ears, a deep terror and despair welled up inside me. Katie was gone. I couldn't believe it. Katie had been fine just yesterday. How could something like this happen? My mind was a whirlpool of confusion. "Why? Why did you go ahead and bury her without telling me?" I asked, my voice trembling. The grief of losing Katie began to turn into anger. No, this had to be a cruel joke by Louis, or perhaps a nightmare I hadn't woken from. "Katie passed away last night, and she's already been buried. How is that even possible?" Louis's tone suddenly grew cold, and I could faintly hear him sigh on the other end. "We had already filed the marriage certificate before the ceremony. Katie is part of our family now. I had no obligation to tell you in advance." "Wait, that's right. I remember. There should be investigations and procedures after a death. There's no way she could have been buried so quickly." "Hey, Louis, what are you hiding?" "Huh? If you had seen the state of that accident, you wouldn't be thinking about things so leisurely. My family has a relative who manages burials, and we handled it discreetly." "That can't be. And besides, Katie's smartphone was destroyed in the accident. Even if you tried to call, it wouldn't go through." Those words pierced my heart. Destroyed? Was she really hurt that badly? "Please at least allow me to attend her funeral," I desperately pleaded. But Louis coldly responded, "I'm going to be busy from here on, so I'll have to excuse myself." And with that, he hung up. I was left in shock. Cold fear and despair swirled inside me. Unable to sit still, I decided to take a taxi to the apartment where Katie and Louis had been living. I knew the address, though it was my first time visiting. When I arrived at the apartment, there was an eerie stillness around the door. I knocked. The sound echoed back at me, unanswered. No one was there. I hesitantly reached for the door, but it seemed to be locked. Just then, a neighbor, a young man who looked like a university student, poked his head out. He looked at me suspiciously. "The people who lived there. They moved out just last week," he said. "Katie." Tears streamed down my face as I murmured my daughter's name. As I stood in front of the apartment, lost in a daze, it began to rain. The sky was clear and blue, yet rain was falling. I used a rain as an excuse to stay there, unable to move. Inside, I couldn't accept that Katie was really gone. Sinking deeper into sadness, losing Katie made me feel truly, utterly alone. After that, I kept calling Louis over and over, trying to find out more about Katie's funeral. But Louis's voice grew more irritated with each call. "Stop calling me. Katie is gone. Whatever you say now, it's too late. Please, let me attend her funeral. I need a chance to say goodbye to her. I've told you before, this is none of your concern. She may have passed away, but she was part of our family. You need to respect our decisions." Despite my continuous calls, Louis eventually stopped answering and blocked my number. Feeling powerless and consumed by despair, I had no choice but to accept the reality that Katie was gone. Though I clung to the memories of her, the grief of losing Katie, and the overwhelming loneliness that came with it slowly ate away at me. I lost my appetite, and my weight dropped drastically. But I didn't even have the energy to care about such things. And time passed, until 3 years went by. No matter how much time passed, a part of Katie still lingered in my heart. Life went on, but Katie's absence constantly cast a shadow over me. When I woke up in the morning, I thought of Katie's smile. Before going to sleep at night, I could still hear her voice in my ears. No matter how much time went by, Katie was never far from my thoughts. That day, on my way home from work, I was absent-mindedly thinking about Katie, as I often did. I wondered what her life would have been like if she were still alive. As I was lost in these thoughts, I suddenly noticed someone standing in front of my door. My heart skipped a beat. It was a woman, just standing there. Her frame was slight, and her long hair swayed gently in the breeze. I froze for a moment, unable to move, staring in disbelief. The woman noticed me and slowly turned around. What? No way. Standing before me was Katie, who I had been told died 3 years ago. She was as beautiful as she had been, as if time had stood still. I was overwhelmed with confusion and shock, rendered speechless. "Mom, I'm home. I'm sorry for being so late," Katie said, her voice trembling and tears in her eyes. Katie was alive, standing right in front of me. Was this a dream or a hallucination? Unable to believe what I was seeing, I stared at Katie's face. I stumbled backward, and in a shaky voice, I asked, "Katie." Tears streamed down my face, and through the whirlwind of emotions in my mind, I repeated her name over and over. Katie smiled softly and approached me. "Mom, I'm so sorry for everything. Is it really you, Katie? How are you still alive?" Though the words were coming out of my own mouth, I was completely lost, unsure of what was real anymore, but I continued to question Katie. "I'm sorry, Mom. So much has happened, and it took me too long to come back." As if suddenly remembering, I grabbed Katie's hand and hurriedly pulled her inside the house. My daughter, who I had been told died 3 years ago, had returned. The situation was clearly abnormal. I needed to hear the full story right away, so I sat Katie down at the table and faced her. Holding her hand tightly, I noticed how rough it was, like someone who had done a lot of hard work. I gently stroked her hand, which was dry and cracked. "Katie, what on earth happened? How did it come to this?" Katie looked at me with confusion in her eyes. She hesitated for a moment, then locked her gaze on mine. Taking a deep breath, she finally began to speak. "Mom, ever since I started living with Louis, right from the start, both him and his parents have." Katie's voice faltered, and she placed her hand on her chest, struggling to continue. I decided to wait, letting her speak at her own pace. After a few more deep breaths, Katie began speaking again, this time in a quieter but steady voice. "My position as their daughter-in-law was terrible. It was like I was less than human. They treated me like a slave." I was shocked, but at the same time, a part of me doubted her words. "Since the time you started living together, that was quite a while ago, wasn't it? I had met Louis when they were living together, and he didn't seem like someone who would treat her so cruelly. Louis, he's very kind. He's calm, intelligent. There were even times when I felt I didn't deserve him." To Katie, Louis initially seemed charming and reliable. With his handsome features and gentle smile, she had fallen for him. But as she grew closer to him, his true nature slowly began to reveal itself. But with me, he was always so controlling. He wanted to know everything I did. At first, I mistook it for care, and I was even flattered in some ways. But then it started to become painful, didn't it? Yes. He and his family would constantly say things like, "Ours is a prestigious family. You should be grateful to live with us and work for our sake." What is that supposed to mean? Katie's voice was shaking. Learning about the suffering she endured behind what had seemed like a happy life together crushed my heart. Katie continued, "They made me promise not to contact you after we got married. They told me I would never see you again." I was stunned, anger slowly building inside me. "That's unacceptable. How could they do such a thing?" Katie lowered her eyes. "The day before the wedding, I came to visit you because I thought it would be my last chance. I snuck out without Louis knowing, but..." Katie's voice filled with regret. "But Louis found out. I don't know how he knew I went to see you, but I looked at Katie with a questioning gaze, silently asking, why? Katie gave a troubled, self-deprecating smile and slumped her shoulders. Louis laughed and said, I put a GPS app on your smartphone. You didn't even notice, did you? And then, what happened? He took my smartphone away. They told you I had died in a car accident, and that the phone was destroyed, cutting off all communication with you. Tears welled up in Katie's eyes. Hearing this story, it felt like my heart was being torn apart. In retrospect, why hadn't I tried harder to visit Louis's family during those 3 years? Even though I didn't know their address, surely I could have found a way if I had tried. But instead, I had been paralyzed by shock, living in a haze of despair, doing nothing but wasting away. That's unforgivable. Were you fighting all alone in that horrible situation? I didn't have a choice. There was no one to help me. I was treated like nothing more than a servant for Louis's family. Katie's tone was distant, as if she were recounting someone else's story. I hugged her tightly, though she still looked as beautiful as she had 3 years ago. Beneath her clothes, her body was frail and thin. I had to protect Katie. The desire to shield her welled up inside me, overflowing from the depths of my heart. I'm sorry, Mom, Katie whispered. Why are you apologizing? Louis's the one who's at fault for everything. Katie began to speak softly, almost as if she were murmuring to herself. Louis hadn't been cruel from the beginning. He had been so kind. She wondered aloud where things had gone so wrong, and I gently stroked her head. You know, I realized that Louis had installed the GPS app on my phone. She confessed. What? But I thought it was just to make sure I wasn't cheating or something. I never imagined he'd get so angry just because I went to see you. Katie looked at me with innocent eyes, as if seeking validation, silently asking me whether her choices had been right or wrong, whether she deserved to be forgiven. It's okay, Katie. I'm here now. I'll protect you. No one will hurt you anymore. Katie buried her face in my chest and cried. In that moment, I resolved to protect Katie at all costs. The fear of losing her again, mixed with a burning determination to save my beloved daughter, flared up inside me. I would never forgive them. As I held her hand tightly, a question suddenly bubbled up from the depths of my mind. But why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you tell me how much you were suffering? Why didn't you ask for help? Katie lowered her eyes, a single tear sliding down her cheek. I didn't want to worry you, Mom. After being berated by Louis's family for so long, I started to believe I had no worth. She cast her gaze downward, realizing how much she had suffered, how she had carried this burden alone for so long. I wondered, had I been so unreliable as a parent? If only she had said help. Just that one word. But then, a year ago, when Louis's mom ordered me to clean the whole house, I found my confiscated smartphone in the storage room. Katie explained that she had charged the phone, praying as she waited for it to turn on. The phone wasn't broken, but the service had been canceled, leaving only a few functions still usable. The first thing I did was install the GPS app. I kept the phone recording all the time and carried it with me wherever I went, making sure no one would find it. As Katie finished recounting her story, her previously dark and somber expression brightened slightly, filled with hope. It seemed that finding her smartphone had been the turning point, a beacon of light that led her toward escaping her oppressive life. They were so sure that I was always at home. Louis and his family never even thought to check the GPS app anymore. Thanks to that, I was able to move freely without raising suspicion. That's amazing, Katie. So what did you do next? I gathered enough evidence of the verbal abuse so that I could file for divorce with Louis. At fault. I've been enduring it all this time, and today, when they were out of the house, I packed what I needed and ran here. Katie's face showed a sense of relief. I hugged her tightly, overflowing with gratitude from the bottom of my heart. You've been through so much. I should have confronted Louis and his family sooner. Then you wouldn't have had to suffer like this. As she buried her face in my chest, can I live with you again, Mom," Katie murmured softly. The moment those words reached my ears, a warmth spread through my heart. "Of course, Katie. Let's live together again. From now on, we'll face everything together and enjoy life as we support each other." Katie looked up at me, a faint smile on her lips. That smile, like a glimmer of hope lost in her suffering, was radiant. Together, we would rebuild our lives. Though the path ahead would surely be difficult, I knew that, as long as we were together, we could overcome anything. Holding Katie tightly, I felt the flicker of hope for a brighter future. In the days that followed, however, I started to notice something about Katie's behavior that troubled me. Even in the middle of the night, she wouldn't stop fiddling with her smartphone, staying up until morning without sleeping. No matter how many times I told her, "You need to get some sleep," she would only give a half-hearted response and continue to gaze out the window instead of resting. This felt off. Feeling concerned, I suggested that we visit a nearby psychiatrist, but she vehemently refused. Reluctantly, I drove her to a mental health clinic farther away, one that had a beautiful exterior, hoping she would feel more comfortable there. The clinic was on the 3rd floor of a building, and the elevator was small and stifling. The doctor, a slightly overweight man with a kind expression, listened patiently to Katie's story. Later, I was called into a separate room, where the doctor told me, "She's depressed," in the same casual tone someone might use to say, "It's just a cold." They prescribed 2 types of medication, one to calm her emotions, and another to help her sleep. Gently pulling Katie close, I realized just how deep her emotional wounds were. After that, we visited a law office together to discuss her divorce. With Katie's medical diagnosis and the audio recordings she had collected, the evidence was deemed sufficient, and we planned to file for compensation from Louis in divorce court. Additionally, given the severity of the verbal abuse she had endured from her in-laws, we would also seek damages from them. Now it was only a matter of taking it to court. Katie had made up her mind about something. It wasn't enough to simply talk to Louis about the divorce. She needed him to understand the pain he had put her through. Today was the day. I sat next to Katie in a quiet cafe, ready to support her. Louis arrived a little late, and Katie glanced at me nervously. I smiled and reassured her, "It's okay. You've got this." Louis looked different from the last time I'd seen him, tired and worn. He took a seat, ordered an iced coffee, and without even acknowledging me, stared directly at Katie in silence. "Louis, we need to talk. You left the house without a word. Do you know how worried I've been? Even Mom's been frantic." His gaze was a mix of confusion and irritation. When the iced coffee arrived, he stabbed the straw into it and took a single sip. "Your verbal abuse and cruelty. I can't take it anymore, Louis." "What nonsense are you talking about? Hurry up and come home to do the housework." "That's why I bothered to show up. I was diagnosed with depression, Louis. Because of the way you treated me, I've been suffering." For a brief moment, Louis was silent, but then a cold smile crept across his face. For the first time, he acknowledged my presence with a glance, smirking as he said, "Hey, who put you up to this?" Then his tone shifted back to indifference. "Doesn't matter. You're my wife, and you'll do as I say. I don't have to listen to you anymore." Katie's voice trembled with tears, but her words were firm and resolute. "I want a divorce. I want my freedom back." With that, Katie reached into her pocket and pulled out her smartphone, playing the audio recordings she had gathered. Louis' past verbal assaults, along with the vicious remarks from his parents, filled the cafe. Katie didn't care about the volume. She didn't care if people stared. Let everyone hear it. Let them all know the kind of man Louis really was. "You're useless, can't do anything right. You should be grateful you even have a place in this house." Louis' own voice echoed back to him, growing louder as it reached his ears. He looked visibly shaken, his face turning pale. "Turn the volume down. You're disturbing everyone. This is the reality I've been living with, Louis," Katie said calmly. "Now you understand how much you've tormented me, don't you? Louis was speechless, a look of fear creeping across his face. To have his own cruel words played back to him like this, how must it feel? He took several more sips of his iced coffee, wiping the sweat from his brow, clearly rattled. Aren't you embarrassed, dragging our family's name through the mud like this? I'm not afraid of your words anymore. I'm choosing to leave you and reclaim my life. Her voice was strong and unwavering. Louis, clearly shocked by Katie's sudden assertiveness, stared in disbelief. It was likely that Katie had never once stood up to him like this before. As I watched her muster every ounce of courage to speak her truth, I applauded her in my heart. What you did to her is unforgivable. For her to live a happy life from now on, she needs to be free from you. I turned to Louis and spoke firmly. He was visibly shaken by my words, covering his face with his hands. Wait, just wait. Divorce, that's impossible. As the eldest son, what will my family say? I can't be the one to break tradition. No, Louis, what's impossible is for you to continue. Louis was at a loss for words, clearly shaken. His face went pale, his eyes flickering with fear. Katie has proof, evidence of how much you've hurt her. We'll reveal everything in court. The mention of court made Louis's face flush red with anger. He stood up suddenly, slamming the table as he loomed over Katie and me. Gone was the composed, handsome man he liked to portray. Instead, his face was twisted in rage, revealing the real him beneath the surface. Are you both out of your minds? I told you from the start we come from a prestigious family. Do you even understand what it means to live in my house? You, Katie, a penniless girl who rushed into marriage just for my wealth. His voice was tinged with uncertainty, even as he spat those words. I found myself watching him from a distance, almost detached, wondering, why was he so angry? Why couldn't he value Katie? Why, if he feared this outcome so much, had he continued to torment her for so long? The consequences of your actions will come back to you, I said, maintaining my resolute stance. Katie rose from her chair, taking a step forward to confront Louis's trembling anger. The suffering you caused me, now it's your turn to face it. Louis, shaken by her words, took a step back. We explained that Katie had consulted with a lawyer. With the evidence of the verbal abuse recorded, Louis would be taken to court, and financial compensation would be demanded. Are you really going to go through with this? Do you have any idea who my family is? We have prominent figures, celebrities even, in our lineage. If this scandal gets out, that has nothing to do with me, Katie retorted sharply, her voice filled with newfound strength. She had made her decision. No more running away. She was going to take back her life. Weeks passed, though Louis initially resisted. When the lawyer pushed forward with the court case, he quickly agreed to the divorce and to paying compensation. When Katie heard the news, a sense of relief began to wash over her, as if the years of torment were finally starting to fade. But healing was not so simple. Her emotional scars were deep. Though she took her medication regularly, there were still many nights she couldn't sleep. Sometimes, without saying a word, she would break down in tears. I believed those tears were cleansing the 3 painful years she had endured. So I sat quietly by her side, offering no words, only presence. Katie wasn't yet ready to return to work, but slowly, she began to reconnect with old friends, her spirit starting to brighten once more. Her smile, which had been lost for so long, began to shine again. Seeing that transformation filled me with joy. Now, Katie was living with me, helping with household chores. On weekends, we would go out together, sometimes visiting the zoo. I hadn't been able to spend time with her when she was young because work kept me so busy. I never imagined that we'd find ourselves at the zoo together like this now, with her all grown up. When we arrived at the zoo, Katie's eyes lit up with childlike excitement. Look, Mom, that panda is so cute. Seeing her innocence and joy brought a smile to my face. It made me think, how long had it been since I last visited a zoo? We spent the day together, moving from one animal exhibit to the next, enjoying the simple pleasures of being in each other's company. "Hey, Mom, did you hear? Louis and his family are constantly fighting. They've used up all their savings," Katie said as we casually strolled past the quiet animals in their enclosures. Katie paused suddenly as we neared the far end of the zoo. There, in a small isolated cage, sat a little fox. "That's what they deserve. They'll never understand the pain you went through," I responded, laughing softly, as if a weight had been lifted from my heart. Katie's eyes remained fixed on the fox, motionless and forlorn. "Yeah, I can't believe I wasted all that time suffering for people like them. It's time I let it go." "That's the right choice. Doesn't this fox look kind of lonely?" Katie's voice was soft, filled with empathy. The little creature lay quietly, its head lowered to the ground as if it were too tired to move. As I watched the fox, I found myself reflecting on the past, those feelings of isolation, the fear of being misunderstood. I thought about the days when her freedom had been stolen from her. Somehow I couldn't help but see her former self in the caged fox. Just then, rain began to fall unexpectedly. The sky was still clear, a passing sun shower, perhaps. It seemed like the kind of rain that would stop in just a few minutes. We took shelter under a nearby roof, watching the sky as we waited. The scene felt eerily familiar, just like that day, the day I learned Katie had passed away. That feeling of despair, that unbearable grief beneath a sky just like this. But this time, there was something different. A rainbow stretched across the blue sky, bright and hopeful. We stood together in silence, watching the rain quietly pass. Families and couples around us did the same, waiting under the shelters until the rain subsided. "Life is so hard, isn't it?" Katie murmured, her gaze fixed on the rainbow. "Yes, it is," I whispered in reply. "But the pain is over now. Let's be happy from here on out." "Okay." Katie looked at me with a soft, knowing expression before turning her attention back to the fox in the cage. The fox, which had seemed on the verge of sleep just moments ago, now looked directly at Katie, as if sensing something. It lowered its head to the ground again, but this time with a sort of quiet peace. From that moment, Katie and I continued to live our days together, supporting each other, laughing, and sharing our worries. We were building a new bond, stronger than ever. As we moved forward in life, hand in hand, I knew there would be challenges and hardships, but together, we could face anything. Together, we could overcome. No, not just could, we would. Absolutely.
I can't believe I'm the only one without food. That's just cruel, mother-in-law.
As the eldest son's wife yells, she covers her face with both hands, her eyes brimming with tears. Just as her words imply, all that's in front of her is an empty glass and a solitary fork. The relatives seem to finally catch on to the situation and begin to jeer one after another. Whoa! Could this be Emily's debut of tormenting her daughter-in-law?
I'm on Team Naomi. Ghost mother-in-law, stop the torment. Begone, evil spirit.
Dear daughter-in-law, don't cry. It's a mix of 10% concern and 90% just messing around. I shrug my shoulders at the relatives who are starting to get tipsy from the drinks. For them, the discord between me and the eldest son's wife might just be another piece of entertainment at the New Year's celebration. In that case, as the host, I need to entertain our guests even more. Of course, this includes the very person who caused this situation, the eldest son's wife.
All right, all right. I'll go get Naomi's portion too, so just wait a moment.
With resolution, I clutch a tray to my chest and head back to the kitchen. My name is Emily Johnson, 62 years old. After losing my beloved husband 2 years ago and my eldest son moving out after getting married a year ago, I've been living alone in this house. I can't say I don't feel lonely, but as someone who enjoys her own company, living alone isn't particularly hard for me. That's why I've been politely declining every time my eldest son invites me to live with him. I didn't want to intrude on his newlywed life and, fortunately, I have a lot of relatives living nearby, so I haven't been lonely. However, I would later come to understand the real meaning behind my son's persistent invitations to live together. It was an SOS from my eldest son.
Mom, please come help me right away.
It was one night, a few months after my eldest son got married. My eldest son suddenly called me. It was dinner time, and I was just about to eat my meal. What's the matter? Why are you calling at this time?
I'll explain later. For now, it's an emergency. I hate to impose, but can you come to my house right away?
Getting a sudden call without any explanation left me briefly perplexed. My eldest son's house was located in the neighboring county. It wasn't an impossible distance to cover right now, but it wasn't exactly around the corner either. Still, something in my eldest son's demeanor told me this was no ordinary matter, so I decided to put my dinner on hold and head to his house. What I found there was something I'll probably never forget. Part of the kitchen in their newly built house had been blackened by soot. The smell of burning and heat filled the air, and remnants of foam from a fire extinguisher were still scattered here and there. And right next to that kitchen, my daughter-in-law was crying inconsolably.
What on earth happened here?
Well, we had a bit of a fire. Naomi was so upset, I had to call you. I hate to ask, but could you help us clean up? According to my son, my daughter-in-law was cooking dinner when suddenly a pillar of fire shot up from the pan. I managed to put out the fire in the pan with a wet rag, but sparks flew and ignited the surroundings. I used the fire extinguisher to take care of the rest, but it made a mess of the kitchen. While he was telling me this, I noticed that he was holding an ice pack to his arm. It seems he had burned himself while putting out the fire. I decided to postpone cleaning the kitchen and started tending to my son's burn. Luckily, the burn wasn't severe, but this could have been a major disaster. Perhaps it's a blessing that this was the extent of the damage.
Is Naomi all right? Did she get burned or anything?
I'm fine. She didn't seem to have any burns as far as I could see. But Naomi was the one cooking, and it seemed strange that she was unharmed given the fierceness of the fire. When I asked about this, I found out the cause of the fire. Naomi, it seems, was scared of oil splattering when she was frying frozen croquettes. After some hesitation, she tossed a few croquettes from the edge of the kitchen into the pan. This caused the oil to splatter, and when the heated oil reached its limit, it ignited the gas stove, causing a pillar of fire. I was so scared. I'm afraid of frying stuff. My daughter-in-law continued sobbing. Even though she was shaken, it would have been nice if she could at least help with her husband's first aid. As I cleaned the kitchen, I let out a small sigh. In the end, cleaning the kitchen took about 3 hours. I ended up catching the last train home, and throughout that time, my daughter-in-law did nothing to help with the cleaning. She just kept complaining about how my favorite pot and I had a hard time choosing the kitchen wallpaper. Could it be that my daughter-in-law is bad at cooking? That suspicion turned into certainty a few months later, on my birthday. At my age, my own birthday isn't exactly a special day. It's more of a moment to reflect on getting another year older. Without my husband, I didn't feel any desire to be celebrated, so I planned to spend the day leisurely enjoying my hobby of cooking. But, unexpectedly, I received another invitation from my son and his wife. They wanted to treat me to dinner to celebrate my birthday and to apologize for the previous incident. With that in mind, I decided to visit my son's house once again. But there, I found myself embroiled in another unforgettable incident.
What dish is this supposed to be?
I looked at the object piled high on the plate before me, hesitating before I asked. If I had to describe it as is, I would say it resembles a lump of coal that's on fire. Anyone would think the same if they saw the small, black lump sitting atop a heap of carelessly torn raw cabbage.
Eh? Don't you recognize it? It's fried chicken. Christmas is coming up, so I thought it would be a surprise. Believe it or not, I've been working hard to conquer my fear of deep frying.
My eldest son's wife puffed out her chest as if to say, "Impressive, right?" Upon hearing this, I sent a quick glance towards the kitchen. Despite the lingering signs of a fire incident, it seemed that a major catastrophe like last time was avoided. If my eldest son's wife, who was once terrified of frying, had managed to overcome her fears, then surely it was something worthy of praise. But then,
Fried chicken.
I gazed down once again at the black lump before me. Upon closer examination, I could see spots that had turned a brownish hue from being fried. Perhaps she'd been overly cautious due to her fear of frying, causing it to char. Even if it was burned, it must still taste good, right? Despite my attempts at self-reassurance, it was a tough sell. But refusing to eat was not an option. Looking at my eldest son, who was nervously hanging his head beside his excited wife, I braced myself to take a bite. The true value of a dish is not in its appearance. After all, my daughter-in-law had gone to the trouble of preparing this for me. I couldn't just dismiss her effort. So, I mustered the courage to bite into the lump. Ignoring the burnt smell, I chewed. The outer shell, which felt like charcoal, made a crunching noise and crumbled, revealing the rubbery texture of the meat underneath, filling my mouth. It was a taste unlike any I've experienced before. What had she used to marinate it? It was incredibly sweet. And the burnt parts were bitter. Honestly, I wanted to spit it out right away. Despite the unpleasant taste, I somehow managed to swallow it with the help of some water and mustered up a smile. Oh, it's tasty. Probably the hardest I've ever worked to say anything in my life. My efforts seemed to pay off as my daughter-in-law beamed with joy. It's a common story on daytime TV, a mother-in-law criticizing her daughter-in-law's cooking leading to family discord. A single offhand comment from the mother-in-law can place the son in the middle of the dispute, which could lead to the breakdown of the marriage. But it seems like I've managed to dodge that bullet. Just as I let out a sigh of relief, my daughter-in-law mercilessly placed the next dish before me. She described it as a seafood soup, but seeing the raw shrimp in the overflowing green liquid, I felt a bit dizzy. Now, I find myself in the hospital, getting in for drip. My memory is a bit fuzzy for the 2 to 3 days after the dinner party, but it seems I was found collapsed at home due to severe abdominal pain and dehydration. A relative who happened to visit found me and took me to the hospital. The doctor told me it was food poisoning caused by a bacterium called Campylobacter. When asked if I'd eaten any undercooked chicken, everything fell into place. Fried chicken. Remembering that hellish texture and flavor, a shiver ran down my spine. And I became convinced. My eldest son's wife's cooking is beyond just bad. My son is in danger. Something must be done, and soon. While I was recovering, I got in touch with my son and found out he was in the hospital with food poisoning. Both husband and wife were bedridden, or so I thought. It turned out Naomi hadn't eaten any of the food she had cooked, and she was perfectly fine.
Naomi doesn't eat her own cooking?
I asked.
I'm not sure about during the day, but she's on some sort of diet for breakfast and dinner. Always eating salads and smoothies. That's why she probably doesn't realize how disastrous her cooking is.
My son explained.
But she must at least taste it, right?
I argued. I don't know if she doesn't taste it or if she just can't tell it's bad. Either way, I'm at a loss. He replied,
So you've been eating that food all this time? It's okay to have different tastes, but it's definitely bad for your health. Why not excuse yourself from it from now on?
I suggested. While giving this advice, I had a change of heart. It might be difficult. When she caused the small fire, Naomi never apologized to the end and only complained. Even if we pointed out her poor cooking skills, she might not admit her faults. Worse, she might become agitated. My son seemed to understand this as well, and laughed as if he had given up. At first, I couldn't stand the bad food and always wanted to live with you. But even if we live together now, Naomi has high pride and won't relinquish the kitchen. She even gets furious when I try to cook. I was careless and got food poisoning this time, but recently I've learned to defend myself enough to avoid being hospitalized. Don't worry, he assured me.
Really?
I said. Even so, there's no way it's healthy for him to keep eating food that doesn't suit his palate. As a small aid, I asked my son to bring Naomi to our home for the New Year's celebration. Many relatives would come, and it wouldn't be a problem if the number of people increased by 2. I would cook a feast with my skills. My son was happy to accept the offer, looking forward to my home-cooked meals. I'm glad. I could potentially teach Naomi some cooking under the pretense of giving her recipes for any dishes she liked. But reality took an unexpected turn. After celebrating the new year with my son and his wife who came over on New Year's Eve, I woke up in the morning to find the dishes I had prepared over several days completely changed. When I went to the kitchen and saw the catastrophe, everything went dark before my eyes.
Good morning, Mom. Thank you for the delicious dinner last night. As a thank you, I helped with the New Year's celebration dishes you had prepared.
Naomi said with a laugh.
Helped? You mean this? This isn't a prank.
I exclaimed.
No way, Mom. I would never prank you. I just made a few tweaks. Party food can be boring if it's always the same, right? I thought a change like this might be good.
Naomi responded, grinning innocently. I was speechless in front of her smile. But I felt like something was falling apart under me. All the dishes I had spent days preparing for today. I had procured only the freshest of ingredients. In honor of the new year, I had even splurged on some usually pricey items. Now, they were just glorified garbage. Ignoring my eldest daughter-in-law's gleeful explanations, I dug around hoping to find something, anything that was salvageable. In the end, everything I had prepared was ruined. The only things unscathed were pre-packaged foods, beverages, and a few ingredients. On top of that, there simply wasn't enough time to start all over.
Kai, I hate to ask this, but can you head to any open supermarket right now and grab anything that we could serve at the table?
It's New Year's Day. Chances of finding any party food left on shelves, those that usually require pre-ordering, would be slim. Even so, I just needed something, anything that could serve as a side dish. Kai, my eldest son, understanding my predicament, immediately agreed to run the errands. In the end, I managed to plate up a few dishes using the store-bought deli items and the leftover ingredients we had, successfully saving face, at least in appearances. Of course, during all this, I didn't let my daughter-in-law anywhere near the kitchen. Compared to the feast I had planned, it was pitiful, but I had no other choice. As long as we could get through today, that's all that mattered. Just as I thought that, my invited relatives started to arrive one after the other.
Happy New Year! Thanks again for the invite. I've been looking forward to Emily's cooking all year.
Long time no see, Kai and Naomi. how have you been?" The relatives greeted each other and took their seats at the table. We began with communion wine for the toast, but soon everyone switched to their preferred beers and started eating while enjoying their conversations. They were so engrossed in their chats that no one seemed to notice the unusual dishes in front of them. My eldest daughter-in-law, who was kicked out of the kitchen early, was sulking at the table, still not quite comprehending the situation. Then she noticed that there was no plate of deli food in front of her. She looked up at me.
Mother-in-law, my portion is..."
"There's no portion for you." While poking at the plate in front of me, I replied curtly. The relatives, sensing the tense atmosphere, stopped their chatters. Taking advantage of the sudden attention, my daughter-in-law dramatically filled her eyes with tears and covered her face with her hands.
"It's cruel not to serve me food while everyone else has theirs. This is too much, mother-in-law."
As her words suggested, in front of my daughter-in-law was only an empty glass and a lone fork. The relatives seemed to finally catch on to the situation, beginning to jeer one after another.
"Oh, is this Emily's debut as the wicked mother-in-law? All right. I'm rooting for Naomi. Mother-in-law from hell, stop your bullying. Out with the evil spirits.
Stay strong, bride." It seemed a 10% worry and 90% mischief mix. As I shrugged at the relatives, already tipsy from the booze, I realized for them, the friction between me and the eldest son's wife was nothing more than New Year's entertainment. As the host, I had to entertain the guests further, even the main instigator of this situation. The eldest son's wife was no exception. Can't be helped.
I'll bring Naomi's share too, so just wait a bit.
Resolute, I hugged the tray to my chest and returned to the kitchen. Before long, I returned to the living room with an oval platter in hand. It was a seafood platter. The relatives loved seafood. So this platter was something I had reserved a month in advance for this very day. Both the relatives and the eldest son's wife probably thought that another dish was being brought out for each of them. They were surprised by the sudden appearance of a large dish, but of course, I meant the part arranged by the eldest son's wife. But there was no way they could understand that. The eldest son's wife, in particular, looked pleased, probably thinking it was finally time to showcase the dish she had arranged.
"Oh, we've been waiting. What's this, seafood as well? I was thinking there was surprisingly little variety this year."
"Looks delicious, let's dig in." As soon as I set it on the table, the relatives' forks extended towards it. But, predictably, as soon as they put the seafood in their mouths, screams echoed from everywhere.
"Ack! What on earth is this? Sweet seafood!"
Relatives began visibly grimacing and reaching for water. That was hardly surprising. The seafood platter was heavily dressed in honey. Conceivably, a seasoned chef might successfully combine seafood and honey, but the creative touch was unfortunately added by the eldest son's wife. There was undoubtedly some other unfathomable ingredient mixed in. Naomi tweaked the recipe for you all. Right?
"Yes. I got the idea from a maple syrup salmon poke bowl."
But it wasn't just honey. The oysters were topped with caramel sauce, and the crab was sprinkled with tiny golden pieces of paper. Upon closer inspection, they were actually pieces of origami.
"It's for the New Year's celebration. Don't you often see it in full-course meals?"
Well, those usually come with edible gold leaf. Not paper that can't be eaten. Seems like the relatives agreed. All of them put down their forks with strained expressions. They must have expected the dish to be met with high praise. The relatives awkwardly explained. "Naomi, you do have a sweet tooth. We, on the other hand, prefer spicy food." "Naomi, you do have a sweet tooth. We, on the other hand, prefer spicy food, while the eldest son's wife dropped her shoulders in disappointment. Next, I served the homemade roast beef. It was one of my husband's favorites and a long-standing dish in our family. However, even when I placed the large pot of it on the table, no one reached out with their forks. It made sense. No one could explain why the roast beef was stewing in a pot. Except for the eldest son's wife, of course.
I found this big chunk of meat, so I decided to stew it in red wine. Doesn't it look tasty? Please, help yourselves.
So that was it. The unnaturally dark color was from the red wine. However, it was clear from the smell that the alcohol hadn't been cooked off, and the color was far from being produced by red wine alone. At least, it looked like it was mixed with powdered chili or bean paste. Or it might have been colored with paint. It wouldn't be out of character for the eldest son's wife. And it wasn't funny.
You all mentioned earlier that you like spicy food, right? This should pair well with your drinks. Go on, go on.
Having just rejected her previous dish, the relatives likely felt they couldn't escape this time. They hesitantly picked out the once roast beef from the pot and took a bite. Then, screams echoed again. From their repeated calls for water, it seemed it was too spicy this time.
This is ridiculous. What kind of a sick joke is this? This isn't fit for human consumption. Even dog food is better than this.
Finally, it seemed they had reached their limit. One after another, harsh words were hurled at the eldest son's wife. Upon witnessing the relatives' reactions, the eldest son's wife finally understood the harsh criticism her creative dish received, and she burst into tears.
You're all so cruel. I worked so hard on this. Turning mom's cooking into garbage and then complaining about it, unbelievable.
The eldest son glared at his wife in disgust. This roast beef was a dish that the eldest son often enjoyed, making his anger even more potent.
You turned it into garbage. So this was originally Emily's cooking?
That's correct. Everything on that plate is store-bought. Naomi turned all the chicken noodle soup and party foods I prepared in advance into waste, so I had no choice but to buy these.
Waste. Such a term.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I should have said poison, considering what was found next to the pot.
I held up an empty spice bottle for everyone to see. The label read nutmeg. A common spice, typically used in meat dishes. As of last night, this bottle was unopened, meaning that Naomi must have dumped the entire bottle into the pot.
Do you know? Nutmeg is a wonderful spice that can make meat dishes delicious in small amounts, but it can actually be poisonous. There have been instances of people dying from overdosing. The lethal dose is only 10 g. The most common poison, isn't it?
No way!
By the way, this bottle contains 15 g. Considering all of it was dumped into the pot, if you finished eating, it's certainly enough to invite death. Stop joking! Are you trying to send us to the hospital?
Accusations turned into shouts of anger as the reality of nearly being served poison on top of food worse than dog food set in. Overwhelmed, Naomi began crying and pleading.
But I didn't know. Nutmeg goes with meat, right? I just wanted to make it tastier. It's not my fault. Yeah, you said the same thing before. You didn't know about Campylobacter. Nobody taught you. Yeah, that's right. You never learned the basics of cooking from anyone, didn't listen to any advice, didn't even properly read a cookbook. You just cook on a whim, not even tasting your own food. That's why you end up making garbage.
At her husband's harsh words, Naomi stopped crying. She probably thought her husband would side with her. but he mercilessly called the dish garbage and turned to the relatives. He seemed still angry that the relatives had deemed me a demon mother-in-law without knowing the full story.
Now you understand why my mother didn't serve Naomi food. She ruined my mother's cooking. And she's not even remorseful about it. There's no need to prepare a decent meal for someone like that. Isn't that right? If you still side with Naomi, I will cut ties with you all here and now.
Faced with the eldest son's reasonable argument, the relatives bowed their heads in silence. As if to drive the point home, when I asked, "Would you like seconds?" and moved the meat closer, the relatives screamed, backed away, and some even fell from their chairs. As I remained silent, they eventually began to mutter apologies in dry voices. After that, the remorseful relatives ate only the original store-bought dishes, and each of them went home, each with words of apology. The eldest son's wife tried to sneak away amidst the chaos, but my son and I didn't miss it. We made sure she sat down and took responsibility for the mess she'd created. And of course, that meant making sure she ate her own creation. As a result, she's now in the hospital. She could only manage a few bites of any of the dishes. While it was a bit unsatisfying from my perspective, I think it was a good opportunity for her to learn just how outrageous her cooking was. Afterwards, I was left with the problem of dealing with the leftovers. After some thought, I decided to take them with me when I visited my eldest son's wife in the hospital. I figured if I showed them to her doctor, they'd understand the cause of her illness. However, I had the good fortune to bump into her parents who were also visiting. As things naturally played out, I ended up handing the leftovers to them. As a result, upon discharge, my eldest son's wife was immediately sent back to live with her parents. Her parents apologized profusely, saying things like, "We had no idea she was feeding Kai such horrible things, and we don't need any money for medical expenses. If you want to divorce, we're okay with that." So, my son and I, who had been harboring resentment all this while, finally felt like we could let it go. And as for our relatives, they lavished us with expensive meats, fine liquors, and fresh fish as an apology. When I said it was too much for me alone to eat, they suggested we start the New Year celebration anew, which made my son and I burst out laughing.
You know, it's just not the New Year without Emily's cooking,
they said. Those words warmed my heart. After all, the purpose of cooking is to bring joy to others. So, I will continue to hone my skills and make those who look forward to my cooking smile.